and any changes to the agenda that was sent out. First, I guess I just want to make sure, does everybody have a copy of the agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
Beautiful. Okay. Jacob did send it out in case you don't have it, but beautiful. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the current agenda?
So moved, Trish.
And a seconder?
Anita.
Thank you kindly. Okay, let us jump into the presentations. We'll start off with, we welcome Mr. Burgess and Marlene Miranda to talk about the 2021 Migrant Worker Farm Program. And just as a premise, Mr. Burgess, is this also, just so I can understand, is this a presentation? Is this an open forum for feedback, or what is the synopsis of what we're going to be trying to achieve today?
Yeah, so I just had the presentation, or the agenda circulated to me. So there is no presentation from our end. It was just a discussion on what was pre-circulated. There has been no real changes to, from public health point of view, on the process. What was circulated was some of the provincial changes that were notified of as at this point in time. And as you guys know, both the feds and the province are undertaking different task force to look at the issue. We have a bit of an advantage for those online. Shanker is both on the OMAFRA committee and on the federal committee. Yeah. So he's on the he's one of the expert panelists on both those committees. So we'll be able to have some unofficial advanced insight on the activities of those committees. Marlene has informed me that the OMAFRA committee has met once, yep, and the federal committee has not yet met at this point in time. So at this point in time, we are under the premise of the operations will be same as before, with those additional requirements from the province that was pre-circulated to in correspondence to, I think it was late last week on Friday. But we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Dusty, Mike here.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I think we should know what the province has submitted so that all members of the board are familiar with. So could Mr. Burgess please outline the request from the province or the?
Well, I think the biggest issue, and Marlene can expand on it, I think the biggest issue is there's the requirement of the 6 feet separation throughout the whole housing period. So where last year the emphasis was on reducing the risk to the background risk, via the 3 of the bunkhouse. Now, in addition to that, now there's going to be a requirement for throughout the growing season, throughout their use of the bunkhouse, there's a requirement for 6 feet of separation and normal social distancing practices. The other item is a more minor item. It's a contact sheet for anyone who comes on and off of the farms. So similar to when you go to a restaurant or a gym or any of that stuff, there's a requirement for tracking, and that's for contact tracing purposes. I'm not sure if I covered that off correctly, Marlene, but.
No, that's correct.
And on that note, is the I had a gap, I think it was maybe with my internet, but is the because we do it because we work for National Grocer, so it's mandatory for anybody that comes in the office as a visitor log sheet, so it's nothing new. But is that provincial? I think I gapped. Is that a provincial program or is that a Norfolk program?
That particular one is Norfolk, and it's just in keeping with all of, it hasn't been articulated by the province that I'm aware of. However, it's in keeping with all of the directives that we abide by within the public health. So every organization, as Jason said, such as restaurants, spas, is being asked to keep a log. And when we did go through the farm outbreak locally. Not having a long log made it very challenging for us to be able to do contact tracing so that we could contain the outbreak wherever it may be. So it's critical to do that contact tracing, to have that log quickly. We do have a mandated requirement to track all contact tracings within 24 hours. So that is a Ministry of Health requirement for the public health.
It was also one of the findings in some of the other outbreaks outside of Norfolk County. So it's anticipated that that's going to be a requirement. So that was one of the difficulties with managing outbreaks on farms in other regions. So that is, it's kind of a best practice. It's not written in regulation at this point in time, but it's kind of an accepted best practice, not just provincially, but nationally.
It is in writing though for all other sectors at this point in time.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Anita, I see your hand up. If you can give me 1 second. So Marlene, we made a motion as an Ag Advisory Board a month or so ago that instituting new protocols and programs would be discussed going through with us for discussion and just for feedback. And I'm not saying that this is a bad. I think it works, and obviously contact tracing is something that works across the world. But for future memos and for future programs, will there be Ag Advisory Board participation in these, whether how small or large they are?
Yeah. So the intent has always been to engage, and we're committed to that. We have tried for a few weeks now to set up a meeting, and unfortunately availability didn't enable it. We had been getting inundated with farmers, respectfully so, who need to start their inspections. And we didn't want to start inspections without having guidance out there for everyone, and have inspectors and farmers have to go through the process twice. So, and then there was an email that came out from farms with requirements as well to have those inspections. So there was a level of urgency for sure. So we did put out the guidance with the hope of still meeting, and gratefully we are today to get some feedback. Because I think part of the goal today and engagement is we need to get to this 2 meter distancing, and I think we want to work together to see how we can assist you with that. And then, as Jason's already spoke to, I think this is a good table and a great opportunity for you guys to help influence the feds and the province on what housing standards may look like into the future. So I think, from today, there's really those 2 main goals that I would hope that we can have ongoing engagement with. And if there are things that we can help with, and I know there's been some questions from farmers about, making sure these inspections are done timely, and we've started them immediately. We're happy to hear that feedback and try to incorporate it into our practices to facilitate those inspections and get us to the 2 meter distancing component that will be required.
Yeah, and just from an operational point of view, this is something that's going to go to Board of Health and to council, but this inspection is actually more time consuming than previous inspections for a bunkhouse. And if you remember back at the early days of the pandemic last year, because everything was shut down in the county, we were able to redeploy staff from other departments to assist public health in the inspections and the other requirements of public health. Now that the county has opened up almost all of its services, there is no staff to redeploy. And this level of work is quite significant. So there will be motions or reports coming forward to expand the headcount in public health. This is something that other public health units have done across the province. It's something the province has done. Actually, it's for return to school. So there is some, I'm just being transparent, there is some concern with, if we have to condense a whole bunch of longer inspections into a short period of time when we don't have the resources, that's going to be a pinch point for the industry. And that's something I just want to be transparent about. So that's something that's going to go to Board of Health early next month is the request for the additional staff.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Anita first, please.
Okay, my question is for Marlene. Just some clarification on the visitor logs that we're required or will be required to maintain. So just wondering what type of farming operations would need that. So if a farmer had offshore workers in a bunkhouse and they had a farm market stand or a farm market on their farm, or in my case, a farm winery, farm breweries, how is that different than a grocery store bringing in people? And so just some clarification on what types of farms would require that type of tracing.
That's a great question, Anita, and I'll take that back to the team. I know they're working on different guidance to share and get feedback from the farming community, so I can put that on the agenda to circulate, and we'll have that out to you. And again, those aren't in stone. We're open to feedback on that. And if you're following regulations, though, from a COVID perspective, like a grocery store, or like your winery, Anita, then that, you would follow those guidelines. If there's other workers coming or contract workers coming into the bunkhouses, like an electrician, we'd want logs of that, because it's those people that we would want to be able to contact to follow up with. So I think we can look at the different type of farmings and provide you with a log for some guidance, and public health inspectors would be able, all the farms have public health inspectors assigned to them, so they would be able to assist you with when to use it. But the more logs we have, quite honestly, the better, because then we would have them available to quickly follow up with.
Yeah, thanks, Marlene. I think that provided great clarification already. So anything, visitor logs that would be related to any potential contact with farm worker residences or farm workers directly. So that, I think that just gave me great clarity there.
Yeah, no, so like, let us know, Anita, if there's anything. At the end of the day, the goal of it is that if, hopefully we don't, but if we have an outbreak, we have a quick log of who has interacted on the farm, so we can follow up with them within the 24 hours, because that's the ministry mandate. So if you think about it from that perspective, hopefully that'll assist you as well. Recognizing that for those of you who have different farming operations, will have different requirements from occupational health and safety, and even just the general wineries, etc. So it'll vary somewhat, but it's really about just having that quick access to the people that have interacted on the farm, so that we have it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next up, Mike Burkle, please.
Anita already answered my question there, so we're all good. Thanks, Dusty.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Mr. Hayden.
Sorry, Dusty, just a personal experience on the contact list. I have a former client in Niagara who's a winery, and they had an issue with one of their service providers actually had a COVID positive case. And originally through their contact tracing, they had thought that they were actually at the winery and it set off some alarm bells. But when the winery actually went back to look at when the electrical service was done through their contact, the guy's memory was off, what day he was there and that kind of stuff. So it actually pushed them out past the period. So it actually helps both ways sometimes when you have that. So, sometimes you're looking at it that this is something you're doing for public health, but in some cases it actually could be beneficial to you also.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Without a doubt. Okay, Mr. Hayden.
Yeah, so just to go to the point, and I think Anita's touched on it there at the moment. So if it's not province, why are we mandating it? I guess is a question for Marlene. And could you approach it a different way to stop farmers from getting their back up on it? Could you approach if there's a requirement for you to do a 24-hour trace, that maybe just slightly different wording, that growers or farmers are suggested to be able to produce that visitor log to aid and help you with the process, just to put a slightly different, I guess, spin on it, and maybe get a little bit of buy-in. I think if you're looking at it and saying, well, if we don't mandate it, then farmers aren't going to do it. The ones that I think you ask them to do it are going to be the ones that are going to do it if they're mandated anyway. That was just a note and feedback. And I think immediately from, I think you understand that that people are going to look at this maybe a little illogically. And the first comment is going to be, hey, when Walmart starts doing contact tracing, then I'll do it as well. And I think that just kind of helps ease some of that and just say, hey, we're not mandating that you do this. We're really asking and appreciate if you would you'd consider coming along with us on this one, because we think it's a good step in order to minimize the impact of any outbreaks that would happen. Another thing as well, point number 2, just while we're on the meeting request thing, because it came up as a bit of a bone of contention from my perspective, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page here. Marlene, any requests that you've made that have gone through the Ag Advisory Board that I've seen have come up as just, hey, we'll jump on the next meeting kind of thing, and it wasn't necessarily a formal request that went out for the meeting. So if you've been expecting for somebody in the Ag Advisory Board to get back to you immediately, I apologize, but it wasn't projected from that perspective. So I don't want you to think that we've been ignoring you. If you reach out and you're looking for a meeting, I'm sure that we would have done a very expedited response to get that put together.
Well, all I know is I sent a request through clerks to have a meeting. It came back that it wasn't there. And then I reached out to Councillor Columbus directly to say, if we couldn't get a full meeting, I asked him maybe we can get the executive together. And then a day after I think that request was made to Councillor Columbus, then this started to pop up. So I don't exactly know what it was, but there was a request through clerks for the meeting. And then when we got the no back, that's when I went to Councillor Columbus, since he's our council representative on that. And then shortly thereafter, we were able to schedule a meeting. So I'm not exactly sure of the timeline or who did what, but.
Yeah, well, I apologize, Jason. I think what we were looking for, and Dusty had reached out for availability. And yeah, it was availability we were looking for to put the meeting together. And I guess we kind of left that rest with yourselves, and we didn't follow up on it. So apologize for that. But we definitely weren't ignoring you. Sorry. So I just want to apologize to you both if you got that opinion from it. No issues.
If I may, I just want to go back to your commentary about just presenting the log differently. So thank you for that. It's well received, and I think I agree with you. I will state, though, that just for your reference, in the letter that came from the health unit, we did articulate that the logs were in the event of an outbreak, because it will assist us with contact management and outbreak containment. And really that is the intent of those logs. But we'll definitely position it from that perspective moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, Anita, are you? Is your hand still up on the right hand side there?
No, I should try to figure out how to get that off. Let me
just click the hand button again.
Okay, got it. Yep. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if you'll let me just ask another question there while it's fresh in my mind too.
Yes, sir.
So we referenced the 6 foot thing, Molly, and is there an option there for physical barriers in the absence of a 6 foot distance? So some neat things that people have been doing with tents and other things on bunk beds to be able to try and reduce that exposure. Even single beds, putting curtains or walls in place of those. And then how far, I guess the other question comes up is how far, if we can't accept some barriers, then I guess what do you include as a limit on that? Is it a wall, or is it yeah?
Yeah, so a curtain, I would say no, but physical barriers, I would be permitted. The challenge is going to be, and I'm not the expert, would be fire and building restrictions. And so that might be a conversation that we'll need to have with our fire and building and provide maybe some guidance, or when we're doing inspections, we can work through that. So the intent is that people can be 6 feet or 2 meters, 6 feet or 2 meters apart. And we can work together to try how to maximize the capacity with that.
Yeah, I think the issue that Toronto and Ottawa doesn't quite understand is that there's a fixed constraint capacity on housing, on farm housing. So I think there's, you know, I've had discussions with the province, and it was a delegation that we made at AMO, and I've had some discussions with it, and Shanker would be more, you know, has more in-depth discussions, but at the political level, there's not an understanding of why you can't accommodate some of these things easily, because there's just not the housing capacity. As I say, it's a fixed constraint capacity. So one of the things which is a big, you know, I would say a big concession from a public health point of view that Shanker is making is the allowance of bunk beds. And on the surface, that makes no sense, frankly, because you're not 6 feet separated and you're sleeping on top of one another. However, this public health unit understands the physical constraint that's there and the inability to actually house the workers if, you know, we pile too many things on. So I think what we're going to be looking for is, you know, for that, by allowing that that to happen, we need to reduce risks in other areas. And, you know, if we can look at some other things around how the bunkhouses operate and that kind of stuff to reduce the overall risk component, that's something that, you know, we're going to continue to work on. This all being said, if the feds or the province comes out with a very hardline rule on that issue, then Shanker's hands are going to be tied on that one, because he can't really go below the requirement. He can add on top of a requirement, but it's hard for him to go below a requirement. So that's something that is going to be subject to a lot of discussion, and it's a good thing Shanker is actually on the two leading committees on that, because that is a point he will try to stress, is how do you actually execute on some of these restrictions.
Yeah, I think I'll add something to that though. So for the growing season of 2021, with the exception of any other federal or provincial guidance, there'll be no bunkhouses. Hopefully we won't be in a COVID world after that. Yeah. However, bunkhouses are a topic. So bunkhouses moving forward from a new housing standard may not be an option. So I'm not saying it is or it isn't. It's not in keeping with public health and from an infectious disease perspective. And Shanker is agreeable to move forward this growing season with that. But I just want to put it on the table that it clearly is not best practice, and you are not social distancing in a bunk bed setting.
If I could comment on that as well, is obviously this year and going to this into this fall for 2021, with, like you said, like how you guys commented on the building and square footage restraint, there's gonna be quite a few buildings being put up this fall. So with that notion, there's gonna I'm happy that bunk beds are going to be used for the 2021 season, but for future, the floor plans will be designed around this program. So where will be the short-term and the long-term planning for a timeline be offered for farms? I know I'm kind of jumping and I'm cutting ahead of Trish. I apologize, Trish. But while we're on this topic of bunk beds, I mean, our square footage and airspace is based upon that. So what does that look like as a dynamic?
Yeah, so I can't answer your question because those are federal guidance that comes in standards. So it will be through them that those will come. It is their program. It's not a public health program. Obviously, public health and these committees are having those conversations. So I do think it's valuable to get your information so we can take that forward. We have a great opportunity, but we're not the ones who are going to set those standards. So unfortunately, I'd love to have an answer for you, but we're struggling with the same, and we are getting multiple farmers who are calling, hey, we're in the middle of a build, or we want to build, what's that going to look like? And we just don't have the answers because it needs to be set by the federal program that these migrant farm workers are under.
And a question for, and then this is my last one, I apologize, Trish, is what, with building and bylaw, what is the collaboration? How closely does the health unit work with building and bylaw to comment on what the health unit and obviously feds are coming through and provincially? Obviously, they have to adhere provincially, but is there also crossing with those departments?
Well,
Go ahead.
yeah, I can start. So like the CBO position itself is similar to a medical officer or health position. They're an employee of the county, but they actually have a duty of obligation to the province. So they are, we cannot actually overrule or rule on how he interprets the building code, which is a provincial act. The CBO may consult with the public health department or with the planning department, but the CBO is the CBO and is protected. There's a reason why they designed it that way, to protect them from these debates. So they're, what I would say here in Norfolk County is there is some collaboration. We have been able to pull off some expedited processes, and that's stuff that we can look at. But as far as determining what the provincial or federal standards would be, that's, we're not, that's not something that we can, we can assist with as much. But I think if it's a process of once the feds and province determine what they want, could we have an expedited process? Yeah. That's something we can work on.
Mm-hmm.
Public health's not necessarily involved with the permitting of it, and so therefore, they can certainly work with planning, but it's not, they're not part of the permitting process.
I will say though, in the short term, just back to the question regarding barriers and what may be enabled and not, the health unit did work with our building department through the last growing season back in March and into the spring with virtual assessments and approving that, and some old bunkhouses, etc. So we worked really well together. So if there are those suggestions of putting up barriers, we'll work with our building department again to try to expedite those approvals for some barrier options that may exist. So happy to work with them. We're fortunate that we're embedded in the municipality. It makes it a bit easier for us to collaborate with them, and we'll do that moving forward.
And you also have the same issue with fire.
Okay, I have more, but I'm going to go on, and please, Ms. Trish.
Okay, so I have a few things. One, you speak about the federal guidelines coming out and the provincial guidelines. I know we don't know what the rules are going to be, but do we have some sort of timeline that they're targeting for releasing those?
We do not. As Jason articulated earlier, OMAFRA's met once on this working group, and the feds have yet to meet. So unfortunately, I'll take that forward. We'll keep reinforcing the urgency, and I'll ask Shankar to do that for both of those committees, but we have no idea what the timelines are, unfortunately.
I think that would be a good suggestion for Shankar to take to both those committees, is that they come up with a deadline of when they're going to get this out, right? So at least then farmers know if they're making these plans, do I wait 3 weeks? Do I wait a month? Or am I going to have to make this decision without any guidelines because they're not going to come out till February, right? So I think that will help with the planning process. And I think another thing that would be really helpful for the farmers is if they get some clear indication of what our health unit is willing to go with for the 2021 year. So you had indicated bunk beds will be okay, and then we may need to take other measures to reduce risk. So I think that would be something that would be valuable to make really clear to the farmers. And then what some of those reduced risks might be. But I think when you're doing that, you need to make it very clear that if these guidelines come out federally and provincially that say that's not allowed, then it's not allowed, right? And the farmer will have to adapt. That way they know. And, you know, I think coming out ahead of some of this stuff and thinking, okay, what might be in there in these rules? So if it's barriers, you know, what would acceptable barriers be? So you've let us know that curtains are not an acceptable barrier. So we could have a list of this is acceptable, this is not acceptable. And I think that would go a long way to giving farmers some guidance.
Yeah, I think the challenge, I can say curtains aren't acceptable just because of the infection control piece of it, having, you know, been in the hospital sector, etc. But as far as building physical walls, I think that's really I would suspect it's a planning and fire. And I suspect that it's going to look different depending on the layout of everyone's bunkhouses. So I hear you, Trish, and I agree that clear guidance on what is and isn't should, you know, would assist the farmers, but it might have to be a one-off with some high-level guidance. So I'll take that back tomorrow, though, to we're actually meeting with our EOC tomorrow, so we can take that back to see what we can provide. And but it, like I said, it might have to be one-off on each of these on these proposals, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm just thinking it might expedite things if you can give some options, right? So maybe it's not a wall, maybe it's a plexiglass or something that's not all the way to the door, but it's between the beds, or, you know,
Yeah.
just anything like that, just to give some suggestions. Because I mean, what I'm hearing from farmers is this going to be okay? Is that going to be okay? Right? It's come up about bathrooms, and will those be reduced? And we don't know what's rumors and what's not. But one asparagus farmer is saying, well, would I be able to bring portable bathrooms in, because he only needs them for 8 weeks. So these are the types of things that I think if we can say, if these rules are here, these are some practical solutions to that. I think that'd be really helpful to the farmers to start making plans.
If I may, through this group or other farmers too, if people have great ideas or, you know, want to run an idea by something that you've done that might work, we'd be open to that feedback, because if it works for one farmer, it may very well work for another. And we're not in the farming business, right? So we don't know. And those bunkhouses all look very, I've gone to several of them. I grew up in the area. They all look very different. So it's challenging at best.
For the sake of being painfully obvious, a wall would be in place of the 6 foot distance, correct? It's either 6 feet, 2 meters, or a wall if you cannot adhere to 6 feet. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, if there's a barrier of 6 feet, then you've achieved the goal of not being able to transmit the virus. Yes.
Okay. I wanted to make sure. Okay, great. Mr. Hayden.
Councillor Columbus has had his hand up for a while.
Oh, crap. Okay, Councillor, I apologize.
Okay, yeah, my question's with respect to, it was mentioned by Marlene, I believe, about meeting the standards of the federal government and the provincial government. But will that be adhered to with respect to the 3-person per bunkhouse rule during isolation? Will we be following Ontario and federal standards versus Dr. Shanker necessary standards?
The 3 per bunkhouse rule remains in effect.
It does. So do you think it'll be right that way right across Ontario and Canada, or is that a made in Holloman Norfolk deal again?
Yeah, I don't know.
A lot of people are really concerned about this because they have housing for 40 people in a bunkhouse and they can only put 3 in there for isolation, and it's really upsetting them. I've had 3 calls today about it.
Yeah, Councillor, and you know, I think, you know, when the feds and the province make their rules, you know, they always add on the clause of any other local health unit rules, because you know, when you there's a reason why each health unit was set up that way, because each area has different risks. So it's up to the MOH to address those risks. Our MOH decided that the 3 to the bunkhouse for the 2-week period was what was required to reduce the background risk and to be able to manage any of those outbreaks. So, you know, if the province goes to a more strict guideline, then we would have to adhere to that. At this point in time, Shanker reviews all his policies on a routine basis. At this point in time, he's informing the agricultural community that that's not changing at this point in time until until there's other data to to sway him otherwise. So the 3 will stay. The position that we put forward to the province, and the province has heard it, and there's been media on it, is whether the province is going to pick up the quarantine period and take that under their control. The province actually took out in another community when they had large outbreaks. They actually took over the outbreak management for that community because that community got swamped. Talking to some people, the government really didn't like to do that, to be quite frank. They don't necessarily, the province actually doesn't necessarily have all the resources that you think that they might have to be readily deployed in other areas. The one thing I did hear from the minister when we had our delegation, and he was very clear on it, was there was a failure of people leaving quarantine, the initial quarantine period, healthy. And the one thing that the minister did say is that it's something that they were going to address and correct. That was the discussion we had at AMO. And clearly, when you read behind what he's saying, is that was an identified issue for a number of these farm outbreaks, was that they didn't get through their travel quarantine period healthy, and it impacted these outbreaks in multiple jurisdictions. So clearly that was a focus from the province that they've identified. They haven't provided us with a solution. They certainly know of our solution, and it's something that they're considering. But the 3 is made in Norfolk, unless the province comes up or the feds come up with something that's more stringent. You also have to remember that the feds are also under pressure from various jurisdictions. And even, Dr. Nessathari receives multiple phone calls from the Mexico consulate and embassy. So it's not just the feds and the province, it's also these foreign jurisdictions who want to make sure that their workers are going to be protected under this program. My hope was, in all our asks to the feds and the province, was that they would make decisions in early fall this year, because we understood the timelines. I don't think they're close. They got 1 meeting done, so I don't think they're going to be at early fall. So I think realistically, the quarantine period is going to be the 3 of the bunkhouse, unless something else comes out. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but I think I tried to cover off all the angles there.
Okay. Secondly, there's a lot of questions about testing, whether the workers will be tested before they leave their country, their home country, and whether they'll be tested, say, at the airport or on arrival. Who would be making those rules? Would that be the feds or the province, or who would pay for that? I guess.
If I can answer that one, there has to be testing done right now for the people of Trinidad and Tobago to return with a test no older than 72 hours. So is this something that the health unit is something that we can almost book like a reservation for them to come to the farm? Is it something that we, or what does that look like? Because for these returning men.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to apologize because I started that email, and now that you brought that up, I'm not sure I followed up and sent it. So the health unit specifically isn't responsible for testing, it's assessment centers. We do go out and do testing with our EMS and our assessment centers, i.e. the hospitals or our family health team. in the event of outbreaks, and we work with them. But as far as testing, it isn't actually done by the health unit. We've just been involved in assisting and coordinating it. So we would not be going out and doing testing on the farms. We just don't have the, and nor it's not within our, we're not responsible for doing it, and we honestly don't have the capacity to do it. To actually, go out and test 4,000 workers. Even when the province wanted to test all of the workers, we didn't do that. We worked with a few of the farmers to try to get some sentinel testing, but not testing everyone. So we will not be doing it. If your workers need testing to go back to their respective country, you'll need to set up appointments or do walk-ins at the assessment centers. We are working with our health system partners, and shortly we'll have an assessment center that's going to be opening up at Norfolk General. There's one in Dunnville, Hagersville Hospital, and there's one in Delhi, and we'll have one in Norfolk, in Simcoe soon as well. And the province, Ontario Health, is pushing increased testing and increased capacity. So hopefully that won't be a challenge moving forward for your workers to be able to get their testing.
And the
Just one
delegation, the mayor made a request of the Minister of Agriculture to ask their federal counterparts to change the agreement to require testing. We participate in the program. That would have to be done between nation to nation for the requirement, because the workers have no different rights than anybody else. So we can't force anybody to take a test. Now, if it's contractually agreed to, and the mayor pointed out, as a pilot, she's subject to random drug tests, and that's all agreed to by agreements between the different countries. So she had made that request of the provincial minister to forward that to the federal government to see if they can work that into their into the agreement between each of the nations to have them subject to testing.
Yeah. So just a couple more. Sorry, go ahead.
One follow-up to Marlene's comment. Is there a 7-day-a-week testing site in Norfolk now?
No, there isn't. So the Delhi Family Health Team is doing 2 days a week in the evening. They shifted to evenings from 12 till 8, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Simcoe Hospital is going to start hopefully October the 2nd, and they're going to ramp up. But they haven't committed to their hours of operations at this point. It's really dependent on human resources. And Hagersville, though, is open 7 days a week, 10 or 12 hours a day, preferably via appointment, but they do take walk-ins. And the Dunnville Hospital has limited hours, but does have a testing center as well. So so the answer is not in Simcoe right now, but I'm hopeful we'll get there in the next few weeks, Councillor Columbus.
Well, I think a few weeks is too long to wait. This is not only affect the migrant farm worker program, but it also is affecting the school system.
Yeah.
Where you've seen the emails already that I've sent you about that.
Yeah.
And,
so
we need 7-day-a-week testing, especially if somebody has to do a 72-hour test before they go back to Tobago.
Yeah. And understood. And I've been on 3 meetings in less than 24 hours as the Health Ontario is trying to increase the capacity across the province. So it is being worked on, and they have set some very aggressive targets. And so anyway, if anyone needs testing, they can reach out and we'll try to facilitate that for you. And all I can say is that everybody's working to increase them, but it's just not available at this point in time. But our hospital partners are working on that, and we do have we have several committees going on both provincially and locally to move that along.
Thank you.
And the testing is one part of it, and then you have lab capacity, which is the other part of it.
Yeah.
So they have to move hand in hand with the province.
Yeah, they're also looking at different types of testing, especially for the little guys, just so that it's an easier test to tolerate. So we're looking at that as well. So hopefully we'll have other testing options moving forward, which will not only be more pleasant, but actually should be a bit quicker to get people through the assessment centers as well. I just wanted to make one comment about testing, and I know people are saying when to test, when not to test, and there was a comment, I think by you, Dusty, will the workers be tested on arrival? And that's an effective time to test if we are going to test. If they've just gone through traveling, and we all know the adventure that they go through and all the different stops and interactions along the way, from the busing, the airports, the airplane, etc. You need several days for the test to be sensitive. So testing on arrival wouldn't be appropriate. It would be several days into the self-isolation period that you would have effective testing, if testing is required, depending on what the regulations are determined moving forward.
Okay, no, I didn't say anything about testing on arrival today. I did bring up testing on arrival for a pop-up style method at the drop-off point early in the year. Back then, when we weren't aware of what like the depth and scope of COVID itself. But no, I can appreciate that.
Okay.
And in that memo from Trinidad, like we're still unsure, just as an update for the health unit. Speaking with Eric from the consulate, we're still not sure if Canada is considered a low risk or a high medium risk country. There's two different in terms of Trinidad's national security. So those have two very different protocols. And it's crazy that there's men and women flying home already, and they still don't have that definite. But as soon as I have that info, you'll probably know it as well, but I'll make sure to send it through.
I think from a public health and a testing perspective for the farmers, if we know what countries are making those requests, and if you know how many workers you have that'll need that testing, you know roughly when they're leaving, we can coordinate that or work with you to coordinate that so the testing can be done timely as we move forward.
For sure, and I mean I say this politically, and I don't mean the problem but the problem is that okay, the Trinidadians get tested, but then on a farm that has Jamaicans and Mexicans, like, hey, why we want to know that we're going home safely. So if one country does it mandatory, the other country's men are going to want it, and I mean, it's great that they're willing to get tested. So it's going to open a lot of people regardless.
Yeah. The province has opened up testing, and when we first, became aware of COVID and we were managing it, access to testing and capacity was very limited. We've continued to increase the capacity, and testing is now available for anyone. So if your workers want to be tested at any point in time, especially as they're going back home, they're definitely entitled to have that test.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay. Just for the sake of understanding what's going on at these meetings, because obviously they're core and there's a lot going on. Just is Dr. Shanker advocating for a 3-man quarantine across the province? Is he advocating for that? Are we privy to that info?
I wouldn't. I would say that I wouldn't. I can confirm with Shanker. I think it's not an advocation of one position or another. It's just trying to solve the problem and addressing the risks that are there. I would say that across the country you have different different viewpoints as to how to manage it. On a federal basis you have Quebec, BC, Alberta, Ontario, and PEI all managing this in different fashions. So I think there's lots of different, and then, within Ontario, some of those provinces took a provincial approach, and in Ontario, we took a regional approach. So we even within Ontario have different approaches and applications. So I think at this point in time, I think they're looking at the environment of the different options, what has worked and what hasn't worked. And, I think there'll be something different that comes out, from that process. And that's where I've always felt that, we should have been doing more work to put a position together, to make a submission to these commissions, but we just haven't been able to cross that bridge to get to that submission. But so I would say he's not advocating on one particular position, especially knowing Shanker as I do. He's a data, statistics, and factual guy, so he'll just look at facts and stats and you know, and look at the different options.
Yeah. I think to say that it should be advocated across the province or the country, different regions have different risk sets, right? So, you know, our neighboring county, Brantford, may only have 400 migrant farm workers. We have 4,000. So the risk set is different. So it's a combination of data and the risk set in every area. So I would agree, you know, I don't want to speak for Dr. Nissathuri because he can do that, but I wouldn't say he's advocating for 3 per bunkhouse, but advocating to reduce the risk and provide that guidance and lessons learned from our experience. And I know other medical officer of healths are doing the same thing.
And the official position of council that was been provided to the province and the feds is that the province take over the initial travel quarantine period, similar to the BC and PEI approach. So that was what was passed by council, and that was forwarded to to both the federal government and the provincial government.
Okay.
And they sent very nice letters back to say thank you for your thoughts.
Nice. Okay. Hayden, you have a question, sir?
Yeah, I got a couple here, and I'll try and blast through them here. Just with respect to the comment that made on Dr. Shanker and reasoning with him. I mean, I see some other things that could involve here in the up and coming season. Just, is there going to be at any point where Dr. Shanker is going to be able to join us with these meetings to be able to have some reasoning?
Potentially, I think it's better if, you know, if there's a particular question that those get circulated, then he can prepare a more fulsome answer to it. Because, you know, I think that will get you the better response. And I think once he knows the question and has provided an answer, it's easier for him to then, you know, field questions on the response versus off the cuff kind of responses.
Hey, Curtains, just to go back, and Trish asked most of the questions I had, but just to go back to that, Marlene, I don't know, you mentioned that there'd already been some examples of barriers that have been put up that worked and that were compliant. I don't know if we got to the point whether we asked if you'd be able to send that out, those ones that are already existing. I know there's agricultural operations that are adapting some of those, but if you have some that are approved already, would we be able to tell people what those are?
I can ask the team to see what type of barriers they've put up and what type, and we can circulate what we have. We just, because they're all private enterprises, we do need to keep certain things confidential, but I will ask the team. I don't have specific examples of a barrier for the 6 feet distancing. I think my comment was, and that if anybody has any examples or if something works, let us know, and we'd be happy to circulate those examples, because what works for one farmer might definitely work for another. We don't have the answers to all of those things, so any feedback is good feedback, so we can work towards assisting the farmers however best we can to approve these bunkhouse inspections.
Yeah, 100%. But if there's some out there that are already approved, that'd be great to know as well. Health Center partners, you mentioned that you have good communication with them. I'm just listening to Dusty talk here about the 72-hour report thing in Trinidad, and some of the testing takes between 1 and 5 days to get back. I'm just wondering if anybody's thought about that yet, and whether there's a way that the Health Center partners, if you could have a discussion with them on whether the 72-hour thing's reasonable, how a farmer would go about making sure that he had the test results within a 72-hour period. Because I think that just listening to that sounds like there could be some challenges there, and that's definitely something that could help us understand better.
Yeah, that's a great comment, Hayden. And what I can do is I can take it to the Ontario West Assessment Center conversation. I just got off the call from them prior to this one, and ask for some type of expedited fashion if we have people who need quicker turnarounds. The turnaround time for test results kind of varies from 2 to 5 days. It does depend on what lab it goes to. So I can take that forward and see if there is, if you identify that you need a turnaround time of 3 days or 72 hours for travel reasons, such as yours, we can definitely put that on the agenda, and I'm happy to do that for you. I can move that forward.
Yeah, I have a good friend whose daughter just flew out to France for postgraduate school. France has a requirement you have to prove within 72 hours a negative test. They had the same challenge, and the hospital there would not guarantee them their response. And they went back to France and say, well, what happens if I go early to make sure I get my test? They said they wouldn't accept it. It had to be within 72 hours of travel. So the French government wasn't accepting if it was like 4 days before, and the Ontario and the hospital in St. Catharines wasn't guaranteeing that they would get their result back. So they went on the earliest possible. They were able to get a reserved visit, like an appointment to do it, but they were essentially crossing their fingers, making sure they could get their test result back before their daughter went on the plane. So it's I don't know, it's a weird thing that I think people are struggling with.
Yeah, and that'll create some huge unknowns there, along with, and I don't know if the Trinidad guys are the same, Dusty, maybe you can clarify, but Jamaican guys have a whole bunch of paperwork that they have to process, and they have to have a COVID survey that they've completed online before they're even able to go to the airport. So just all this coming together and having that 72-hour report, I think that's going to create huge challenges.
Each man in Jamaica is responsible for online pinpointing on Google Maps where their house is, determining how many sinks, beds, rooms, doors, and whatnot are in each of their rooms before they're able to, or each of their houses back home in Jamaica. And this is all in a period of time when harvest is wrapping up. Go get a COVID test, and I mean this is above and beyond the health unit. But just so you can understand, like what that 72 hours is going to be packed, or if they don't do it, they're not allowed on the plane. And obviously, planes are all on the farmer's bill.
I think what would be good is if, from the hospital's point of view and the testing point of view, if there is, yeah, but even if they know, like, even if you have HR testing capacity, like, I'm just wondering if you guys could assemble what your known travel dates are, and then, we can maybe package that up to give it to the folks.
Leave it with me, because I can, or do you have, Dusty, do you know if you or other farmers have people returning quickly, that this is going to come up like in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, so we have men, we have about 80 men flying home in between October 20, they usually fly on Wednesdays and Thursdays. We put in our flights into Canag the 28th to November 4th. We have around 85 men.
So you just cut out there, Dusty. So you said about 80 men on what dates?
Between Wednesday, October 28th and Thursday, November the 5th. That is going to be a sweet spot for a large chunk of men flying home. Then Ginseng will be flying home about 3 weeks after that into December. Because farms did grant a 1-month extension, which will not be, as it is right now, will not be carrying in to the 2021 season for a length of duration pass. So normally, obviously, the contract's 8 months. They may be able to stay for 9 this year, just because of obviously the demand for getting things done on the farm. The other comment on that, while we're talking about farms, I asked Dave Vandeveld, who's a director on farms, is the length of duration of the term going to be 8 months plus 2 weeks to accommodate the 2-week isolation period or not? I don't know at this time, but I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's something, like I just have to be careful because I get pressure from, both Haldeman County and Norfolk County as far as cost. We just have to be careful on, we're here to support and that kind of stuff. But this might be something that we need to really coordinate with farms and CanAg because A, we don't do the testing, we're not responsible for the testing. But if we can lend some support to maybe help with the processing and some coordination, that's something we can take a look at. But it is something that is a little outside our scope, but I think it's something that we can certainly pass this on to Shanker for the federal committee because this might be something that farms needs to coordinate a bit, or can like the travel provide, like there might be some other level of coordination that can be done on this issue also.
Yeah, as far as the test itself, it won't be difficult because you can just, when you're gonna, when your workers are leaving or the date they're leaving. So go 72 hours before, and you can book appointments at any of the assessment centers. The challenge will be is getting the results back. So like I said, I'll talk to Ontario Health in the assessment centers because it's really about the lab and the lab turnaround time. But is there a process of expediting for these situations? So we can potentially come up with an algorithm, and for a select group of people have turnaround times for these tests a little bit quicker. But we'll see what we can do. But it is really, it's a lab issue is where the bottleneck will come.
As a ag advisory board and as an industry, how can we help prioritize a list for you to make sure that a memo can get out in due time for the 2020 season, but also to make sure a memo can get out in due time for obviously what is within your control? How can we help streamline that process?
A memo for what? Just so I'm clear.
Well, just similar to the memo that was sent out last Friday regarding the 6-foot spacing and the on-farm checklist, because there's other things involved, like confirmation that bunk beds can be used, but I know that might be overruled by federal. Is our outdoor bathroom facilities allowed? Say I build a giant house, but with only stalls and toilets. Is that going to be allowed? Are Jimmy John's allowed? Just for the things that are within our control, what does that look like?
So if you could collate a list of questions, and if you could collate a list of things that that you think might work, or what you need, then it's easier for us to look at that whole list, create some guidance documents for all the farmers versus getting one-off questions from all 200 farmers. So a list of
FAQs.
a list of recommendations, a list of questions that you may have, a list of things that we might be able to do to assist you to advocate, such as the testing and the results in 72 hours. We'll pull a team together. We'll try to answer all of those questions and provide them to you in a timely fashion. I know the team is trying to already work through some guidance to send out, as stated in the email and letter that would be forthcoming. But the more information we have from the farmers in one, not to say you can't call and ask or, provide as things come up, but something collated from all of you would be helpful for us to be able to answer in a timely fashion.
Okay. Hayden, I see your hand still up, sir.
Sorry, I put it down.
Okay, all good.
I guess one more question here, and this is maybe a bit of a challenge for Marlene to answer. We got cold and flu season coming up, and I'm dealing with a little bit of it already at the plant where we have a bunch of people here that are working for the Norfolk Fruit Growers Association. You're starting to get some challenges with people with COVID-like symptoms that I think we're just going to deal with in the normal course of cold and flu season. How are you preparing to deal with the same for farm-related issues, I guess? Because I think there's a big concern about how somebody with a common cold is going to be dealt with at the farm, and we could be dealing with quite a bit of that here coming into the fall.
Yeah, so like anybody else, if you have symptoms or if you think you might have COVID, you go and get a test. So we have created with all of the assessment centers an algorithm that articulates what needs to happen if you have symptoms. It is more lenient than what it has been as directed by the province. In the sense that if you have a test prior, you automatically went into a 14-day isolation. If you're symptomatic now, just to walk through a couple of those scenarios, if you're symptomatic now and you get tested and you're negative, you do need to isolate until you're negative and symptom free for 24 hours. So assuming you got tested today and you got the test results in a couple of days, and you only had the sniffles for a day, you could technically get out of isolation in a couple of days, 2 to 3 days. If you are symptomatic and you refuse to be tested, which is as a choice, you could be asked to go into isolation for 14 days. The biggest challenge is if you're symptomatic and you've either been a direct close contact, or if you're symptomatic and you have just traveled, then you will be asked to isolate for the 14 days. So anyone who presents at an assessment center now will be receiving the same type of direction that's been jointly developed following the provincial guidance. So yes, the flu season is a challenge. We are going to start doing flu vaccination clinics as soon as this flu vaccine is available to hopefully assist with some lesser symptoms. I do know that BC is starting to remove some of those symptoms from their symptom list because the COVID symptom list is quite extensive. Ontario hasn't followed suit as of yet. But we are waiting to see if new directives will come forward because, as Councillor Columbus has already articulated, all the sniffles with the children in the schools and the daycare is presenting to be a challenge.
Yeah, and I think what I hear you say is basically the offshore workers are going to be treated like anybody else in the population in Norfolk County at the moment, whereas they go through the survey, the algorithm suggests when testing and when not to test, and what the outcome is of any testing. So if there was an offshore worker, they would be treated just the same as you and I, whereas if they were symptomatic, had a negative test, and they were 24 hours symptom free, they'd be able to go back to work.
That's correct. Yes. Now, and so their roommates would be treated as their family. So depending on what that looked like, there would be some discussion related to what they would need to do, but that would be no different than what we do with any other family in our counties.
Thanks for the clarification.
That's a challenge facing all the employers. We got a county with over 800 employees, and we got employees dropping every day because their kid, in a school, and so I'm losing employees for several days here, 2 weeks here. It's I think going into the fall, it could be I don't know if the technical term is, but it could be a bit of a gong show with how reliable your workforce, can be from, especially with, workforce where they have kids in the school system.
Okay. Do we have any more questions that are on the hot button right now? I do have one. Is okay. Let's imagine that the province and the feds come out with a protocol guideline tomorrow. How much notice will be given if a dramatic plan it goes above and beyond the health unit on behalf of like the Norfolk health unit to us, like no bunk beds? If say the province allows bunk beds, how much notice will we be given as the farming community for these changes that are above and beyond the Fed and the provincial guidelines?
Uh, I can't, we don't get any, we don't typically get any pre-warning of when those announcements are coming out, and you'll have all experience that the Premier has provided direction and guidance, and they've been effective immediately or within 24 to 48 hours. So that could be your reality and our reality. I can't speak to that. I would hope that we would be able to have some type of lag time to implement such things, but during most of COVID, things have changed, and we've heard about them at the same time everyone has, and they've had fairly quick turnarounds for implementation, which is very challenging.
Luckily, on our side, we have the inside track with Dr. Necessary for both these committees. But the reason why I bring it up is
medical point of view. You don't know how the politicians will take the advice from the.
No, but he'll know what the final resting document potentially coming on the pipeline is going to be, right? And on the flip side, the reason is like, what sort of level of confidence do we have that there will be a grace period given to Norfolk farmers?
I would put very little confidence level on that. My gut feeling is they're behind the 8 ball. They are behind where I think they should have, like, on a best practice approach, the guidelines should be out today.
Should have been out.
Yeah, should have, it should have been out 6 months ago. I think, if the schedule is they've had 1 meeting at a provincial level and 0 meetings at the federal level, my bet is guidelines are going to be coming out in January or February or March, because, hey, the sun doesn't shine until April, May for you guys, so why do I need anything more advanced than that? Because there's no pre-planning involved, obviously. So, I think you're going to get very little notice. I think the feds and province are behind, and now they might surprise us, and that would be great. But if I was banking on it, I'd be banking on very little notice. I think once the feds meet, I think once there's been once Dr. Nessathari's gone to a few of the meetings, I think maybe we can unofficially provide some, maybe telegraph some timelines, but that would be a best guess, because what happens with these committees is, you have the staff that are the experts do the work, and then they make recommendations up, it goes into the black hole, then it goes into the political hole, and then an announcement comes out. So, we'd be guessing at that, but what we'll try to do is have Shanker provide any guidance he can once he's had a couple of meetings. But I'm looking at this, we're at the end of September. I'm going to say it's probably going to be November before he can even hazard a guess.
Right.
Yeah. Experience has been that we get no forewarning or no grace period.
Right. So if, in judging by how 2020 has gone thus far with the medical officer of health going above and beyond the protocols right now, provincially and federally, will as an ag board, I wonder if it's worthwhile us potentially passing a motion or looking for a motion that for anything that is delivered above and beyond the provincial and federal guidelines, that we do ask for a open house or a opportunity for input from the industry.
You can. What I would say is that the medical officer of health has the power and authority to act as he sees fit in the situation. And, so if he deems something is required, he's actually legally obligated to act under his timetable. So, you can certainly pass that motion, and you can bind council, but there's no ability to bind the medical officer help.
We've learned that.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that idea on the floor, or am I off base with that to the current members of the Ag Advisory Board?
I'll second it, Dusty. I think for sure, the more feedback we can get on this, the better.
Okay.
And
Hey,
I
Dusty,
don't
tell me
think
exactly
what
what
you're
you're
asking,
looking for
just
here, and I'll put it together.
yeah, so just to be clear, I don't think what you're asking for, Dusty, is to be able to change Dr. Shanker's mind, but to have some ability to be able to share on behalf of agriculture any views or key points that might change his thinking on what he's what his direction is that he's wanting to head.
Yeah. I think, to be fair, and again, I can't speak for Dr. Nasathuri, we're always open for feedback. So, we can assess each situation as it arises, and if there's time to get a meeting together and have some dialogue, we're always open to that. But again, at the end of the day, if he needs to make a decision fairly quickly, which sometimes he does need to, that would be within his purview, obviously. And I mean, obviously, you've articulated that as well.
Yeah, and if there's suggestions, like if there, I'll throw it out, if there was appetite by the Ag Committee or by the Agricultural Society or stakeholders, if you wanted to retake a look at the, the hotel plan for the quarantine period, a coordinated approach, the committee can certainly put those forward to Shanker and to, in that case, in that example, frankly, to staff on what is the appetite for that. If there's other ideas that you might think that would lower the risk, it's better to forward the ideas to us and get some feedback from Shanker now versus waiting for some rules to come down and then trying to influence it after a rule's already been determined. So I think the committee should look at some potentially proactive thoughts going forward to address the risks. At this point in time, like I said, Shanker's at status quo from last year as far as approach. But if there's anything that you guys want to consider to reduce risk, I would put them forward.
Well, two things on that. I believe that was the intention of the June 30th ask, which was, it was our belief it was to be a working document to begin the 4-pillar approach and work on that. But that program was put away. But secondly, the issue with again, I'm not going to go down the hotel plan and everything like that. But for this year in itself, and I can foresee it already happening next year, we just to get our men in, there was a combination of 4 or 5 different flights, all within 3 weeks, and then that was just for one group of guys that normally would have been on one flight. Had I went the hotel route, there would be no way that there would be rooms for 14 guys staggered, because there'll be availability for 11 days of the 14. So there are some flaws in that program. So we can talk. This is not the point of tonight. And something for a greater discussion, either offline or whatnot, or for a hotel specific or quarantine specific discussion. But it would have unfortunately had a lot of issues with that. Now, if we go to Trenton or a provincial wide program, beautiful, great, right? But yeah, Anita, if I could, I see you got your hand up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Dusty. Just a final question for Marlene, and I may have missed this, but is the health unit currently doing inspections again, or is that still on hold? And how much longer will we need to wait? I know that I've had an application in and paid my payment. It's been cleared through the bank. I've actually had a commercial inspection in the meantime. I thought when they showed up that they were going to do my bunkhouse. And she says, no, I'm just doing your commercial. But she's gone into the bunkhouse to do a water sample, but still waiting on that. And I know Someone from your department had contacted me and left a message and said, you know, we're hoping to start that in September. So just can you update me in case I missed that as to the time frame that you anticipate that you will beginning inspections again, or are they currently occurring? And how long a lineup is there of people waiting right now?
So they are doing them. They have initiated them. We were just waiting to send out the guidance on Friday. So they are doing so they're going to, like the self-isolation plans back for March, they're going to prioritize based on dates of arrivals, recognizing that there is an urgency. So we are putting all resources to this. You have to appreciate though that the rest of the province is opened up, so our public health inspectors are having to do this, obviously a key priority, but they're also 6 months behind in other inspections as we've opened up the province. So we're trying to manage all of that. So if you have an urgent inspection, reach out to your public health inspector. They are processing them and they're trying to get through them as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Started Monday, right, Marlene?
Yeah, as soon as we sent that out,
Yeah.
we started, yeah.
So we started on Monday, so if you do have a call in, and I would suggest you circle back with your health inspector to see what the scheduling is.
Thank you, Anita. Mr. Hayden.
Yeah, so just to be clear, we put a call in on Monday. We were told that they weren't inspecting. We put a call in on Tuesday. They were left a message because we heard that the inspections were taking place. We haven't heard anything, so we put in another call today, I believe, just as a point of clarification. What sort of time frame do you think someone will get back to us, or is there somebody specific that we should be contacting? Sorry. And that's more of a personal question on an ACB meeting.
If you want to let me know who you talked to, just send me an email and I can follow up with that. So if you call the regular line, they should be getting back to you, and we should be able to prioritize and let you know when they're coming, right? It might not be tomorrow, and I know that everybody wants it tomorrow, but they should be able to give you a timeline of when they'll be out to do your inspection.
Yeah, I can certainly be understanding that things are busy at the moment, but it's just the regular phone line that we've been leaving messages at, and I haven't heard anything back. So if there's somebody specific we should be contacting, then I think that would be a good message to get out to the ag community too.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Hayden. I do understand. I see Debbie Miss France has been waiting patiently on the right-hand side. So I do appreciate your patience, Debbie. For members of the board,
Dusty, just one more thing there. You got Councillor Columbus has had his hand up again.
I can't see his hand. Okay, Councillor. I apologize, Councillor Columbus.
Yes, thank you. And obviously, Dr. Necessary holds the trump card on all these issues for our region anyway, and maybe even all of Ontario for what we know. But my question was back to the grace period. There's growers been calling about that they use migrant farm workers for packing sweet potatoes come January, February. They're used in the greenhouses, mushroom houses, and other places. So they're wondering with respect to their construction projects. You mentioned that there might not be a grace period, but if they come out too strict right off the bat with the regulations, they may need a grace period because all the carpenters and all the builders are really, really busy. From what I'm hearing, they're hard to get anybody in place within immediate time to implement some of these bunkhouse regulations.
Yeah, I think there's two pieces to it, if I may, Councillor Columbus. There's the immediate, there could be a shift with the feds and the province, i.e. you can't use bunkhouses. So,
Bunk beds.
Sorry, I keep doing that. Thank you. Bunk beds.
You're really scaring us with that one.
But you know, the longer housing standards, Councillor Columbus, again, I would hope that they understand that there's all of those regulatory and contractor components that have to be considered. So just, I think it's kind of, it's the short-term guidance that might come out, and then the longer term that obviously has building and infrastructure implications.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, for this and for the sake of time, what would be our logical next step for this program, and on behalf of the Ag Advisory Board with the health unit, yourself, Marlene, and everyone else involved, what would you like from us?
If you could have that list to us, even if it's incomplete sooner than later, then we can work on that in the next few days to have more detailed guidance and Q&As or FAQs out to the agricultural community.
Okay.
Can I ask you if there's a committee member that would want to take the forefront on collecting the questions? If any of the AAB members want to put them to one location instead of us firing them all at Dusty? And if not, I can take the lead on that. Sorry, Dusty, to interrupt.
That's all right.
And if I could ask when I might expect them, because we want to get guidance out sooner than later, because obviously from a pre-planning perspective, but I don't want to send something out if I haven't received the information, but I don't want the delay. So obviously the quicker turnaround, respectful that you guys are all in harvest season and it's a busy time, but what type of timeline so I can let my team know and we can plan to get together and address some of those questions for you.
Hayden, I think for the sake of the time and the critical of it all, would we like to have this in by Friday or latest Sunday?
Yeah, the latest Monday, but we'll aim for Friday if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that sounds great.
That's fantastic. I'll pull a team together so we can get through it and have something out sometime to you next week, Ben.
Okay, thank you. Because there's quite a few and one large dealer of randomly popped up who looks, I'm not going to, this is not, I know this public forum, so it's not a business plug, but who is dealing school portables, and his business has shifted completely to school portables. And I know my business, we've purchased 5, and that's entirely new housing compound. And his lot is completely filled with school portables. And we have, there's quite a few of us I know on the west side that have spoken, said, hey, can you please hold it for at least, 10, 15 days until we get more info from the health unit for how many we need to buy.
Yeah, you'll have to also, on some of those structures, there's building code issues related to that, and also planning, like depending on where you're placing them. So on specific questions like that, those might be some good one-offs with an example, because I'll have to get Fritz involved in that also, because I know if it's not on wheels, it's not licensed by the MTO, it'll be deemed a building in rough terms, and then you have to fall under the building code.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, with like all our site, this isn't about easy to go, but our site was fell under building code.
Yeah.
Which is obviously adds time to it, and got guys coming here soon, but that's not here nor there. Okay, so yeah, we'll get that off. Hayden and I and any other members that would like to work on that with us. We appreciate that. Speaking to other industry stakeholders, just for questions, points of contention, or where any sort of bottlenecks are, we appreciate to send those through.
Yeah. And I actually may push a question or two off to you guys also. There is, just so that you guys understand, there has been questions from both the public and from other elected officials with regards to the cost burden of some of these programs. And I think what we may do is also have you provide comments on that. The generic aspect of the question is, why does a taxpayer in Haldeman County, incur increased costs, due to, these additional regulations, right? And because Haldeman, for example, covers 40% of all the health costs. So it's, that is rearing its head and will rear its head even more as these costs become more known and the increased cost. And to be fair, there are some pointed questions that, and we've had fielded questions about, the cost of an outbreak, the cost of these programs, I think what I may do, Dusty, is pass that over to you so that you can have your own answer prepared. But you're aware of the questions being raised.
Yep. Now, I can say right off the bat that any program that the health unit adopts that is above and beyond the provincial and federal, I can't defend.
Yeah.
Obviously, but yeah, but anything that is that is industry specific. Yep. I mean, this is pre-COVID bunk housing. This is bunk housing that is now what, for me as an employer, we're looking at over now $20,000 per man for building, and that's only going to skyrocket as 2x4s are $4, and with 6 foot spacing. So, but yeah, happy to answer that.
No, I understand, and I think it's important that we can provide an answer that frankly, we have a whole bunch of obligations that are there, and we manage the risk for the county as a whole, and we don't start to divide up the county by saying, well, if there was a school outbreak in one side, then only those people get the tax hit. Like that's not how we operate. But because it's being specifically mentioned to this, part of it politically, I think, is to push the province to, cough up more money. So that's the other political reality to it. But I do have to respond to the questions, and I think it's fair for since they've targeted a specific stakeholder group, it's fair for that stakeholder group to also have a say.
For sure, appreciate that. Mr. Hayden.
Yeah, so sorry, just to be clear in compiling that list of questions, don't be afraid to circulate my email address. You've all seen it there on the Ag Advisory Board emails. So if somebody that you know of has a question, don't be afraid to forward my email to them so that we can get that list together before Friday.
Beautiful. Okay. On behalf of Marlene and Mr. Burgess, any more questions for us?
I don't have any. I just want to thank you for your time and your commitment to work together to work with us and to provide those questions so we can send that back to you timely. So thank you for that.
So we're going to, I know you guys have a bit more of an agenda. If we're done, I have a budget meeting across the hall, so I'm going to jump to that, if that's okay.
While I have you then, I'm going to, Jacob, pardon me, I know I'm beautiful at confusing an agenda. Under other business, the AMO was in August, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Burgess. Was there any update on the Bailey Bridge?
We did present the issue. There was a bit of confusion on that, the Road 45 bridge. The minister agreed that he has not signed off on it. He had thought, because of the suspension of certain items under a different legislation, that those appeals were blown out of the water. We're not sure he was correct on that, and his staff was to circle back with us. So Godby is taking a look at that and talking to the one, I can't remember which engineering firm is on that one, but we're circling with the ministry staff on that one.
Okay.
But the minister thought he didn't have to sign off on that, and there's some confusion of whether he is actually required to sign off on it or not. So we're trying to get to the bottom of it. There is some confusion about some of the rule changes that happened. So we think he needs to sign off on it. He doesn't think we do, and we just need to get a firm answer. So we will circle back with you on that.
Okay, so then for the sake of the action tracking table, Jacob, can you update that appropriately? Who is looking from a Norfolk standpoint, who is into that file?
Jason Godby, and I'll send him an email. I'll remind him I'll just send him an email now.
Okay, thank you. And then lot relocations and lot swaps, was that discussed at AMO as well?
That was not discussed at AMO. It was subject to a in-camera session at council, and I can't provide comment on that.
Okay. Okay, then Hayden, is there anything or any other members, any other from the action tracking table that are relevant while we have Mr. Burgess here? I don't think so. I think that's everything. Okay. Well, I appreciate your time.
Chair, I have one for the action table. It hasn't been listed, but the tree bylaw needs to be added to that.
Oh yeah. Jacob, did you hear that?
I did, yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right. Thank you, Ann. That's a great catch. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, thank you again, Ms. Burgess and Ms. Miranda. Have a great day and a great evening. And next up, I'd like to ask Debbie France for her presentation. If she could go off mic.
Mr. Chair, can you hear us?
Yes, we can. Good evening.
Good evening. Mr. Chair, this is our Slack. Deb Francis sitting here beside me, and also Daphne Schuyler. We'd like to make a presentation to you, but first I would ask if we could ask for extension of time. We have a little more information that 5 minutes will permit us to give you, sir.
Yes, I had a phone call with Miss Debbie yesterday. She said around 8 minutes is what she's looking for. What you're looking for?
Actually, we're probably looking at 10 or 11 minutes.
Okay, and these are updates from the police board meeting this morning?
Some of the information that we provided the police service board this evening we'll also give you as a ag board, because it impacts the rural area as much as anybody else.
All right. Yep. It can be allowed. Thank you. I'm having difficulty seeing you. If you have any visuals, oh, there we go. I can see you now. There we go.
Yep. Just advise when you're ready, Mr. Chairman, and we'll start.
Yes, sir. After you.
Well, okay, then good evening. And first, on behalf of Deb France, Daphne Schuyler, and myself, Orf Slack, I would like to thank the members of the Agriculture Advisory Board for allowing us to speak to you this evening. The issue that I will be addressing is the issue of illegal cannabis cultivation and the negative impact it's having on rural families and communities across southwestern Ontario, but more specifically, Norfolk County. In Norfolk County, the issue is the proliferation of unmonitored medical marijuana producers. There is evidence that some of these facilities are being operated by criminal gangs from the GTA area. Some facilities are being operated by members of the farming community using loopholes in the Cannabis Act to make a fast dollar. Operators of unmonitored medical marijuana facilities are limited to grow for 4 prescription holders. However, they are filling greenhouses that once grew cucumbers, peppers, tomatoes, tobacco seedlings. Once these individuals grow plants that exceed for the 4 prescriptions they are licensed to grow for, these facilities become nothing more, nothing less than illegal grow-ops. The Provincial Joint Forces Cannabis Enforcement Team advised that illegal cannabis is a $7 million to $1 billion industry here in Ontario. In 2018, there was approximately 38 suspected grow-ops in Norfolk County. In 2019, that number grew to 70. The number continues to grow, and we're aware of additional 7 sites in the Simcoe and Waterford area so far just this year. And at our police service board meeting this morning, it became apparent that number is low and there's even more. Norfolk County is playing a major role in the illegal cannabis industry. And I would ask you just to remember this: cannabis cultivation equals gangs, guns, meth, and organized crime. The first step in addressing a problem is to acknowledge or admit that there is a problem. Norfolk County has a big problem. In other areas of Ontario, such as Niagara, Leamington, and Petrolia, different issues surrounding the cannabis industry exist. In some of these areas, greenhouses that were once used to grow vegetables and flowers are being purchased by large cannabis companies to grow marijuana. These facilities were not designed to deal with issues such as light pollution, odor, and noise. Despite modification through these facilities, those living in the areas of the facilities experience firsthand the fact that these greenhouses cannot be modified to address the issues. Rural communities are being ripped apart because of the total disregard these operators and owners of these facilities have for the Health Canada regulations and for those who live nearby. I've spoken to a gentleman by the name of Trevor Brand. Trevor is a young farmer who farms 200 acres near Petrolia. Across from the Brand family is a large greenhouse facility that grew peppers for many years. During this time, Mr. Brand had no issues with the operator of this facility. A few years ago, this facility was purchased by Tilray, which now grows marijuana in the greenhouses. Trevor and his family must now deal with issues such as odor, light pollution, noise, traffic, diesel generators, and 48 air conditioners that run 24/7. Excuse me. 2 years ago, MPAC reduced the residential assessment on its residents by $150,000 as they recognized the negative effect this facility has on its property. Trevor has filed a complaint with the Normal Farm Practices Board, and to date, this young farmer has spent $65,000 of his own money and has been advised that an additional $50,000 to $75,000 in legal fees will be required to pursue this issue. A lady who lives in Brant County has had a horse ranch there for many years. During this time, her horses have never experienced any health issues. A property near her was purchased and new owners began to grow marijuana. The horses began to experience asthma, and all the horses have been put on a regimen of hormone shots. The rancher is confident that the marijuana is the cause of the change in the health of her horses. These are just some of the examples of the negative impact that the marijuana industry is having on rural Ontario. Question: is cannabis an agriculture crop? Marijuana is bred for recreational and medicinal purposes. The Cannabis Act and its regulations control the production, distribution, sale, and possession of cannabis across Canada. Under the Food and Drug Act, products containing cannabis can be considered to fall in one of three categories: cannabis for non-medical purposes, 2, cannabis for medical purposes, and 3, health products containing cannabis, such as prescription drugs. Does marijuana sound like an agriculture crop, or does it sound like a pharmaceutical product? Does the designation of industrial sound more appropriate than agriculture? Just remind you that you do not require a license from Health Canada to grow peppers, tomatoes, and cucumbers. You do not need a prescription to purchase or possess peppers, cucumbers, or tomatoes. I've listed an example of how the value of farms and the houses that are near these facilities are devalued due to the negative impact growing this plant has on properties. I've listed an example of how growing this plant has a negative impact on horses that were otherwise healthy until this plant is grown on property near the horse ranch where the horses are kept. This should be a concern to anyone involved in animal husbandry. There's numerous examples of this plant being growing in Norfolk County, resulting in the neighbors living near these facilities being afraid for their personal safety due to the criminal element involved in the industry. The state of California defines medical cannabis as an agricultural product. However, the definition as an agriculture crop does not extend to other areas of the law. For example, cannabis is not an agriculture crop with respect to local right to farm legislation. I challenge anyone to identify a recognized agricultural crop that is currently grown, which has such a large negative impact on those who live in the vicinity of these facilities where cannabis is grown. Currently, the County of Norfolk has dedicated one bylaw officer to address the cannabis issue. As mentioned earlier, Norfolk County has close to 80 grow-ups and their numbers continue to grow. Obviously, one officer cannot handle this large number of files. If Norfolk County wishes to adequately address the cannabis issue, we suggest 2 additional bylaws, additional equipment, and office staff are going to be required. All this is being additional cost to the taxpayers of Norfolk County. This does not take into account the cost for the county, for staff, and the county solicitor when matters resolve at a hearing at LPAT. Furthermore, it does not take into account for the additional costs related to any action taken by the police. I ask you, how is the cannabis industry making a positive contribution to Norfolk County? The next area we would like to speak to is about hoop greenhouses. Norfolk County staff members at the planning department have advised that anyone can construct a hoop greenhouse without a building permit, which means these sites are being established with no oversight. I remind you that Norfolk County is close to 80 of these sites. Some of these sites cover an area that exceed 5 acres. These facilities are constructed with no consideration of setback bylaws, odor, and electric requirements, just to name a few. Norfolk County requires a farmer to obtain a burn permit if he wishes to burn a brush pile. This same farmer can put up hoop greenhouses that can cover numerous acres, fill the greenhouses with cannabis, use unlimited amounts of chemicals, plastics, and questionable electrical hookups with absolutely no oversight. Norfolk County must ensure that bylaws are established that require individuals who wish to build hoop greenhouses must first apply for a building permit. Having such a bylaw in place will give the county staff the necessary tools required to effectively address such issues as site planning control, parking issues, lighting, and odor. Now, the question, prime agricultural land is being taken out of food production. Currently, municipalities and elected officials in the area known as the Holland Marsh have voiced concern as a result of large areas of their area being taken out of food production for the purpose of growing cannabis. The elected officials and residents of Norfolk County should be equally concerned. Consider that 80 sites in Norfolk County are currently growing cannabis. Consider how much food production has been taken out of Norfolk County. 1, we would ask the members of the Agriculture Advisory Committee to support our submission and encourage Norfolk County Council to implement a bylaw that requires those wishing to construct hoop greenhouses be required to obtain a building permit. As mentioned, this would give the county staff the tools required to provide proper oversight. The oversight would include inspections of the sites, verification that permits and orders issued by Norfolk County have been met. If permits have not been obtained or zoning requirements met, the county must have the ability to issue stop work orders until compliances have been met. Number 2, we would ask the members of the Agriculture Advisory Committee to support our submission and encourage members of Norfolk County to require cannabis facilities to be directed to land zoned industrial. This would result in much easier, cost-effective enforcement and policing of the industry. It would also ensure prime agricultural land remains in food production. I might draw your attention that other communities in Ontario have recognized the benefits of having this zoning requirement. Number 3, we would also ask the members of the Agriculture Advisory Committee to support our submission and encourage members of the Norfolk County Council to implement bylaws with greater penalties and prohibition capabilities. Convictions for offenses such as distance separation should result in a permanent prohibition for the growing of cannabis on the offending property title. This would be known to any new property owner in the event the property was sold. Furthermore, monetary penalties should equal the profits that the property has generated. A fine of $1,000 to $50,000 means nothing to individuals who are making millions. This could be applied to property taxes and collected accordingly. Non-payment would result in seizure of the property by the county. People responsible for these issues that Norfolk County must address should be required to pay for the costs incurred by the municipality. The definitive fee structure should be established. Once a stop order has been issued, a set amount per day should be levied until compliance has been met. The issues that the cannabis industry has brought to Norfolk County are similar to what other communities in Ontario are facing at the current time. However, based on our conversations that members have had throughout the communities, other communities, I'm confident Norfolk County has a much greater problem than other communities due to the large number of cannabis sites that have been allowed to be established in our county. Again, we have attempted to show you what exists or what the issues are here in Norfolk County, but also what is impacting rural Ontario, across Ontario, or across southwestern Ontario primarily. And hopefully you can get a sense of the seriousness of the problem. So we thank you for your time. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
It seems as if Dusty, are you frozen?
Yes, sir. I'm back.
Maybe turn your video off, Dusty, so we can hear you at least.
There we go. How's that? I'm going to go back out and come back in.
That sounds good there, Dusty. I think you might be okay.
Okay, how's that? Is that better? Hello?
Sounds reasonable there, Dusty. Give her a shot.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for having me back. Okay. Thank you kindly for your presentation and your time this evening. I see we have a couple. Ms. Ramirez, is your hand up from prior question?
That's from before.
Okay. Mr. Hayden.
Yeah, no, so that's a lengthy deputation. I was just trying to count the different departments at the county as they were going through there. I got bylaw, health unit, police, property taxes, and building department at a minimum. And I think just it's something bigger than what the Ag Advisory Board can tackle from the perspective of putting any motions together, would be my feeling. I'm wondering if maybe Councillor Columbus, if you might be able to help us out here. I'd hate to put you on the spot, but I think there's been several deputations that have been made through council on this matter in the past, and I think we're just it's something that's a little bit larger than maybe what the Ag Advisory Board is used to having handed to them. Is there any comment here, Mike, on what support the Ag Advisory Board could potentially offer to the situation here?
Yes, I heard Mr. Orville Slack's presentation this morning at the Police Services Board. And at that meeting, following his presentation, the chair of the Police Services Board is going to be writing a letter to the Minister of Health, the Federal Minister of Health, outlining the serious issue that we have here in Norfolk County with respect to these dozens and dozens of cannabis operations. These are the Part 2 operations, and I've been working with Debbie France here just today, trying to update the map that she provided the Police Services Board with. There was 57 locations where cannabis is grown that the their organization has identified, but there are significant more operations that have to be added to that map, which we hope to send with our concerns to the Federal Minister of Health. So that's where it's at. I think we're trying to get the bylaw department to work more closely with what information Mr. Slack and Mrs. France have on hand, and put greater effort into trying to tackle some of the issues that are rising up in the countryside with respect to noise, odor, and lighting, because it is getting more and more serious. And in my ward alone, in the last 2 months, I know of 5 operations that have started up. So they're just all over the place, creating havoc. So I would think that I don't know if Mr. Slack has made a presentation, I can't recall, of late to the Norfolk County Council as a whole. I think we need to have that happen at Norfolk County Council, along with what our bylaw department, the information that they have. So I think we got to get it put back on the front burner to bring this to a head.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, yes, sir. I believe it's my understanding that you are presenting next Tuesday. Is that correct?
October 13th.
October 13th, yeah.
Okay.
If I may just make some comment, as an agriculture advisory board, I'm not aware of your limitations or what have you. I'm just wondering if comments from your board with respect to the zoning and the placement of these, where these sites should be placed or should not be placed. And I don't know what impact it would have if comments from your board were to be made with respect to the Farm Food Production Protection Act. I realize that's a provincial issue, but again, based on our experience, we have had various communications with the Minister of Agriculture. We have, I sent out letters to the Farmers Union, the Christian Farmers Federation, and the Federation of Agriculture with respect to trying to draw their attention to the seriousness of this problem, not just in Norfolk, but across the province. In my position, and I should say in our position, under the Farm Food Production Protection Act, if cannabis was not considered an agriculture crop, if cannabis was not considered a normal farm practice, if cannabis was not given the same consideration under the Farm Food Protection Act, municipalities such as Norfolk County would be able to implement effective controls on the industry. Right now, that's why some communities, the municipalities, when we're speaking to them, they're hesitant to pass legislation because they're afraid they're going to be hauled up before LPAT and they don't want to face the additional expenses. So I think the agriculture community does in fact have a role to play in this. I realize it may take some consideration and thought on this, but that I think is really important. And if the board saw themselves having a role in this, your comments may help. Let's put it that way.
Councillor Martin.
Thanks, Chair Dusty. I know I'm not a official member here, so take my comments with a grain of salt, but I thought it might help if I just wind it back a little bit. I actually suggested to Debbie and Orville and Daphne that they come before you and Police Service Board before coming to council, because I believe that they would be able to make a better case to council if they had checked all the boxes and had comments from your group and from other stakeholders on certain varying levels of their presentation. And so the reason why I suggested they came to you was not to put you on the spot with regards to agriculture, or not even really so much zoning. I wanted them to run by the discussion about the hoop houses, because if they plan to come to council and say specifically that they think that those should require a building permit, and presently right now they do not, I would like to know, in an effort to keep their mission rolling forward, I would like to know what the Ag Advisory Board position is on dropping a permit on top of those hoop houses. And so if you're not opposed to it, are there steps that you think would be helpful that could be put into place where then you would be, reimbursed from the building permit. I don't know, I'm making this up on the fly. This isn't my area of expertise, but if they come to council and they ask this of council, instead of stalling it and just finding efficiencies, I really would have appreciated your comments on it. So not that you need to do it today, but know what their position is and know that they intend to come to council with a similar ask, and then maybe decide from your perspective if there's a workable solution there. Just be my only comment.
No. I appreciate that, Councillor. No, that's a very fair sentiment. Mr. Hayden, do you have see your hand?
Yeah, just listening to all the comments here, I'm wondering if a motion might be in order that the Ag Advisory Board receive it as information, and then additionally that once it goes in front of council, that the Ag Advisory Board be in a position to be able to provide support to council in the direction that they wish to take, direction or momentum they wish to take this in, and up to including a letter of support for any direction that they're heading that may affect agriculture. We can wordsmith that and make it a little better. Sorry, that was pretty rough, but I'm trying to think of a way that we can say, hey, I think this is more of a council matter. We understand what's being discussed here. We appreciate the information that's being provided, and I think it needs to push forth to council, and we need to support council in the direction that they wish to take this in order to help eliminate some of the issues that people are facing in the community.
Well, hopefully Jacob there has something written up that he can give us back, and you can see if you like what he's put together from your words. Okay.
Well, one thing, so specific, that is, I think we'll have to. I know this is not my board. Personally, I do believe that marijuana production established inside hoop houses should. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but in my opinion, I would vote for a permit being necessary for that. Now, I mean, with the current agricultural innovations going on around in my travels around the world and around North America and specifically Norfolk County, does that mandatory building permit for agricultural products being put under hoop houses such as strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, etc.? I don't know, but I saw that. I just wanted to kind of put that out there, that there is a new tangent that is exposed. Now I'm building a greenhouse that it has concrete, so of course we need a building permit for that and engineered. We want all over the place with the windstorm. Also, we have drainage issues to worry about and whatnot. Mr. Garwood, I see your hand is up.
What I was thinking, Dusty, is whereas I am aligned with what the gentleman is saying and so on, I am wondering whether or not it would be wise also to kind of canvass your industry. You represent the agricultural industry. There could be other views, but you just want to ensure that you have most of your players on side, so that when you go to represent them, you're representing their views. So I don't. I mean, it might just be informally kind of reaching out to them and so on, and so that at least you're taking their views into consideration. And when you put forward anything, it can't be splintered where I wasn't a part of this or whatever, but it was more or less a consensus that most of the players are in agreement with you. I would just suggest that.
Now, if I could call upon Ms. France and Debbie and team, it's my understanding. How are you collecting numbers of suspected grow-offs? Is it done driving around every session between Walkingham and Wilsonville, or is there a database that Norfolk or police have?
We have a network of people.
Okay.
We have a network of people that we have been involved with in the cannabis issue that will contact me via email or phone call and let me know of any sites. I'm not driving around the county. All of these are through the acquaintances and residents that have been in touch with me that have concerns.
So like the network that you're working with.
Yes, network of people.
That's great. Wrong with this. There is no as it stands right now.
Sorry, Dusty. Dusty, I'm really struggling with your. Can you try the video off again? It seemed to correct it before. I'm struggling with your audio.
Right. How's that? Is that better?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Okay. The second thing would be study as or other facilities that are federally regulated and whatnot. For these stage 2 or schedule 2 programs, there is no at this time right now other than one. Is there any federal or provincial guidance for controlling or anything like that? Just so I can make sure I'm looking at people.
I think if you have just asked us if there's any inspections involved, I'm not sure because our audio was not very good. The federal government has inspections for Part 1 facilities. However, Part 2 facilities, there are no inspections at all, if that was the question that you were asking.
Because it was way back when. Can you hear me? Am I coming across okay?
No.
Oh.
Dusty. Dusty.
Okay, how's that?
Good right now.
Okay, welcome to Frogmore. Way back when I joined Ag Advisory and Matt Vaughn was part of this, he was part of this trying to understand a Schedule 2 marijuana production plan, and at that time it was direct. The province was looking for direction from people like
Dusty. Dusty.
Okay, I don't know.
Can I make a suggestion here? Can you call me on my mobile from your landline, and then I can hook up here?
I'm gonna call. Okay.
I'm just going to take advantage of this minute here. From a council perspective, you guys know more about this industry than I will ever know. So when Orville, Daphne, and Debbie come to council and they ask council to add a building permit onto hoop houses, how does that impact your industry? That's really what I'm interested to know. And do you have any suggestions that if a building permit was added to a hoop house, how you would be able to still kind of find efficiencies and be able to add that to your farming practices without the additional red tape of Norfolk County, because you're not producing cannabis in it, you're using it for other ag purposes. That would be a question that I have. How would adding a building permit to hoop houses impact your industry?
I would suggest that we talk to farmers that have the hoop houses. I can't really answer that because I haven't been involved in that, but there's a number of them that do, and we can get a better idea. But my perspective, the hoop house is really, it's just a field product. It's not a greenhouse product. And they're just putting the hoop over to give some added protection. So for instance, if it's raspberries, the hoop over it is just, it's protecting them from extra moisture or whatever that would rot them out. So I think that's why they don't require a permit right now. It's not really a building structure. I was also involved when Matt was putting in guidelines, and I know we were trying to, because I was on that committee, trying to put in everything that was possible from a planning point of view. But there were a number of obstacles that we just weren't able to do at the county level. And I know that there were police officers involved in that committee as well, and Ontario Health was there. I think the problem was that a lot of what we needed to happen at a provincial and federal level, and those people were not participating. It was all about human rights. We couldn't even get them to tell us where the buildings were or the operations were, so that our police or so that our fire department was prepared before going into a potential fire.
Did we get Dusty back again?
Yep, I'm back. Trish has pretty much answered my question for this. It was almost like a synopsis catch up on the provincial and federal sort of timelines with Matt Vaughn and whatnot. So I think as a board, before Mr. Garwood's comments were absolutely correct, speaking on behalf of the agricultural community, we have a duty to try to inquire with these operations and see where they stand with it. I know at the Canadian Horticultural Council 2 years ago, as marijuana was becoming more publicly and widespread in production, I should say, well, there's always grown a lot of, but you know what I mean. The Hort Council had difficulty trying to understand, should marijuana fall under the lobbying efforts of the Hort Council. And at that time, Trish, you may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Hort Council did not agree to look after their legislation work because there is no organization provincially or locally like there is the Ontario Fruit and Vegetable Grower Association to then pass notes up to the Hort Council. So the reason why I'm saying this now is we'll try to reach out. Is that a cautious and a proper direction? Try to reach out to some of these producers to see where they stand on these matters. Is that our duty?
I would think so, right? I'm interested in hearing from those producers if there is a permit on that. What sort of problems would that bring them? And then we can determine, are there things that we can do to alleviate some of those problems where it's not going to, where we can stop the illegal activity but not affect food production.
Is it possible to support this from a farm safety standpoint at all?
Can you elaborate, Mr. Burkle?
Yeah, just, I mean, the class 2 production facilities that they're talking about, I mean, just in the last, I think, month, there was one that was busted with 40,000 plants in it locally. The guy's attached to quite a few, I think, in the Norfolk area. But there's often a lot of break-ins, and I mean, you're talking about zoning. There was an issue on the 14th, I mean, twice over the course course of the last year. I know, Debbie, you lived right down the road from that, but with that's detrimental to the neighbors and stuff like that, and also to neighboring farm operations. So I guess I just wonder, like, hoop houses, I agree, but I also see the side that it also would affect a lot of the farmers that are growing like high value crops underneath them. So yeah, I'd like to support you guys, but I don't.
My concern is that we're going to create obstacles for the farmers that will follow rules, but the illegal activities, they'll just do it anyway, because we already have bylaw stuff in place for these operations in terms of separation distance and everything, and they're not complying with the rules because they're criminals. And you know, it really comes down to, we need enforcement to do something about it. And I know their hands are a bit tied too, because I heard stories of how they went into places because they checked with the government to see if they had a license, and then they were told no, and they went in, and then they found out later they did. So I think that's the problem. But at the end of the day, we really need enforcement tools to shut these people down.
Okay.
Mike, if you're talking, we can't hear you. I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I just want to make a comment that I think there are jurisdictions within municipalities in Ontario where you do require a permit for a hoop house, and I think that's probably a place to start. And maybe that's why we are getting more hoop houses than any other area in the province, is because there's no need for a permit. I don't know. We'd have to check with the building and bylaw department on that. Maybe they can do a survey of other regions. And the other thing, I just want to mention that I've spoken to the supervisor of bylaw, Mr. Jim Milson, recently, and last week he had indicated that the courts are all backed up, that there's no court cases with respect to these cannabis issues facing Norfolk County until October sometime. So that's another issue. And I've also got the map here. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see that? This is the map that was handed out by Debbie France at the meeting today, Police Services Board meeting. That is 57 locations, but there's, like we heard, there's 80 locations, and there's a lot of extra sites that have to be added to that. Thank you.
I'm going to ask either, if I can ask Mr. Hayden to yield anyone with their hand up, because I'm unable to.
Yeah, Anita's got her hand up there.
Okay, thank you, Hayden. And thank you, Councillor Martin, for participating tonight. It means a lot to all of us to know that you're wanting input from us. With regards to having building permits required for hoop houses, there's lots of different styles of hoop houses, high tunnels, low tunnels, what qualifies as a hoop house. And probably the last thing that anybody would want to hear as a farmer is that there is going to be more red tape. Now, recognizing all of this, Debbie and her crew are in a situation here that they have recognized so much illegal activity, and this is what Trish has referred to. As an agricultural producer myself, and as a representative of an agricultural community, I probably support cannabis production as an agricultural product, but only if it's in that Part 1, if that's the correct term, situation. All of this illegal activity needs to stop. It doesn't support the legal growers and just brings a lot of criminals to our community. So agriculturally, yes, I believe that cannabis is an important part of an agricultural commodity anymore, or product, but it's in those illegal situations. So it's about enforcement and actually putting some teeth in it. And I don't think things are going to change until we get our federal government on board to give us some support.
Dusty, can I just add a comment?
Absolutely.
Okay. There's so many good arguments here. And I mean, it would be nice if we were able to just, instill, a large fee for the hoop houses, but obviously that could have an impact on individuals who are utilizing them for different reasons, for actually, protecting crops and growing actual vegetables and fruits, etc. And I do agree with Anita that the federal government has really lapsed in terms of this, and we don't get much support federally or provincially. I do wholeheartedly support Mr. Slack's deputation in terms of saying that we do need to add more staff to our bylaw department in terms of the cannabis. And actually, you can add another number to that. I just got a call from a constituent the other day that another greenhouse has popped up at the corner of the 8th concession and Town Line 74. So these things are cropping up, and thank goodness we do have dedicated citizens who are staying on top of it. And I know that, Debbie, you've been in the forefront of it, and I continue to appreciate your dedication to this issue.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment?
Absolutely, sir.
Just to emphasize or rephrase, I guess, when we're asking for a building permit, no time were we suggesting there would be a fee attached to it. That's something for council to work out. However, what we are asking for is that the staff at Norfolk County be given the tools to help police the industry. Right now, there is as I mentioned, you have to you have to obtain a burn permit to burn a brush pile. There's no fee attached to it, but it allows the county to keep track of what is happening in the county. And that's, in my opinion, on a very small scale compared to what we're talking about here. And I agree with the concerns that have been raised. I would not want to see additional I don't see it as red tape, but I'll use that term, red tape, being added on to somebody that's trying to grow raspberries or any other food crop. But at the same time, I'm sure there's got to be a way to draft a bylaw that recognizes that and doesn't make it too cumbersome for the person that's trying to grow a food crop, yet at the same time give the county some tools that they can monitor and police where these facilities are being established. Right now, we're trying to, through our own network, determine where these facilities are being popping up. And that's the only method we have of trying to determine what is happening in Norfolk County. Surely there's got to be a better way of making that determination. If there was a bylaw requiring a permit to establish these facilities, that would be the beginning. If one of these facilities started to pop up, the county then can move in, and there's steps, without going a lot of detail, there's steps then that they can follow to help shut it down and hold the people accountable that are establishing these. So I agree with the members of the board that, yeah, we don't want to add cumbersome red tape to the legitimate farmer. But surely a bylaw, and Mr. Columbus maybe can speak to this, or Amy, surely when the bylaw is drafted, some of this could be all taken into account.
Okay.
Mr. Slack?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you will be coming to council, I understand. It's first I heard of it, that you'll be coming October 13th, is that right?
That's correct, sir.
So I would hope that you can put that right out front, something of that nature. Mm-hmm. And also, if you could present or provide your deputation material ahead of time to the council members, would be a great help also.
That would be very helpful.
Okay, because realistically, this is a hot button topic for a lot of reasons, because there is still a lot of good that can come out of and also legal obligations for people's ability to grow that we also must respect. But at the same time, there's also a lot of opportunities for it to be exploited and to be exploited by the wrong people, and that's why I hope there is some direction eventually from the feds in the province to help crack on this and not leave it up to Norfolk County to steer the entire ship. So as a board, I do agree potentially with the Mr. Dooney's approach for definitely taking this as information. I am pleased that it will be going before council in 3 weeks, and that's huge for the councillors to receive this beforehand to go over the entire docket, because obviously, yeah, like these sites are growing and developing, and Norfolk is becoming seemingly a hub for these. So is that the direction from our members that we would like to take? And then we will look at what council, how they would like to direct, because they will also know to send it to like the various boards, I should say boards, departments that Hayden has outlined. Is that the direction we want to go? We will wait and we will support council. And in the meantime, between now and October 13th, I'll do my best. There's one right across the road from my house to try to reach out to these people to see, where do they stand on and maybe hear their side of the story. Is that the fairest approach?
I think that works, Dusty.
Okay. Yeah, so to make that movement and for us to take that direction, again, do I need, I guess, yeah, so Jacob, please note that we will take this as information. Also, can you please note that for all the councillors and for the October 13th or the next information update to council, that we have heard Mr. Slack and Debbie France heard their deputation just alongside the Police Services Board before this, and that was the direction that we're going to be understanding. And hopefully between now and then, we can reach out with some Schedule 2 producers to see. Now, I know this is also harvest time, so this will be interesting to try to get in touch with them. But I know one that I can get a hold of. Between now and then, we will try to get some feedback from their side as well. Does that sound good, Mr. Robinson?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have any more questions or comments for Mr. Slack and Ms. Francis? Okay. Well, I do appreciate your time and your diligence and your due diligence and your energy putting into this program, and we look forward to seeing where this goes. We look forward to being allies of agriculture and obviously concerned citizens and farm safety. We'll be following this actively. It'll also be part of our active action tracking table, Mr. Slack and Ms. Francis, that is continually available for our councillors for their in sessions, so they can see where we stand with active programs. We work diligently to try to cycle these items through as quickly as possible, or making sure that we're following up that the right people are being followed up with and whatnot. Do you have any more comments for us at this time?
No, I think that concludes it for.
Yeah, just where would you like the copy of our deputation sent to? Whose email address?
If you can send it to the thread, I believe you were part of the thread. I'm just wheeling up right. Yeah, that way all members of the Ag Advisory Board, in that thread as well is the line for the councillors and Mr. Robinson to include it in our minutes. So that's great.
You could send it to me, Debbie, if you want. I'll make sure it gets to everybody. It's Jacob, by the way.
Jacob, okay. Thank you, Jacob.
No problem.
Okay, just thanks to the councillors for being letting us bend their ear, if you will, and also board members. We appreciate it's getting a little late, and thanks again for your time. That's all.
Thank you kindly. Okay. At this time, I'm going to move on to item 5. Can I get a mover for the adoption, the correction of the council meeting minutes from our March 3rd meeting, which Jacob, is there anywhere for us, I know this is an aside, for us to note anywhere, actually I'd like to, in these notes, in these minutes, that there was an attempt for a Ag Advisory Board meeting in late June. I believe it was June 26th or 24th, but quorum was not able to be reached. I know that doesn't help fulfill our mandate for the amount of meetings that we have per year, but that was obviously an important time for the document requested from Mr. Burgess. Is there anywhere that we can record that? Because we have definitely spoken.
I don't see why we couldn't put it in other business for tonight, even.
Yeah, exactly.
And it is recorded.
Okay, thank you. Because yeah, there was definitely a lot of discourse, like looking from a very macro 30,000 feet up level. It looks like we haven't met since March, but that hasn't been the case, and I don't want the records to show that. Okay, so can I get an approval of our minutes from that March? Sorry. Yep.
Right, I moved Dusty. Sorry.
All good. Okay, thank you, Trish. That'll work for the minutes. All right. Where do I bring this up? Okay. Okay, communications for action items. Anything else for action items? I did want to bring up the Bailey Bridge, so I'm happy that we got to ask Mr. Burgess on that one. And I know this was a very quick meeting, so there wasn't a lot of time for other members to add in other action items. For those that are online right now, is there any other items to be brought forward?
Yeah, Dusty, I'd like to follow up with the Board of Health and the councillors with their direction there. I've forwarded on the motions that have been put in place for communication to happen with agriculture from the health unit, and it hasn't been happening. So I think it's just basically just just the point with me that I think we need to put down that, hey, we're ready to be engaged, and the conversation needs to be two-way. I think we've gone a long way with having some conversation here tonight, and I'd just like to document for the minutes here that Marlene's made some extremely great promises here and put some things in place to better that communication.
Okay, that's fair. Jacob, the motion that we were talking about that I made mention in the chat, can you read out that motion as it read in regards to, I mean, even if Dr. Nasathari doesn't want to honor it or not, the fact that we are attempting for communication for any above and beyond protocols that are instituted by our Haldeman Norfolk Health Unit above the federal and provincial guidelines. How does that read right now?
Yes, just give me a second. I'll try and get something together here.
Yes, sir.
Chris, I think you talked about having a list of farmers that you could send information out. I'm wondering if we can't put something together that indicates that the health unit is asking us for all these questions to be collated together and to send them to Hayden, because I mean, if we're going to do this by Friday, people need to know that there's an outlet to send their questions to.
That's an idea for sure. That's an idea for sure. Because we have the agricultural newsletter. And so if you guys drafted up something that you wanted to be blasted out to all the people who are signed up to receive newsletters or information through the municipality, then I could send that out, and you just tell me exactly where you want them to respond to, and that's one way of reaching a lot of people very quickly.
Okay.
And Mr. Garwood, you can use that at your discretion, like, so we can, like, it wouldn't be a problem. Do you need approval from council to send out a request?
No, it's just like when we send out regular updates that strawberry seasoning open or whatever. It's just a way to engage and to communicate with. So we have a list for tourism, we have a list for agriculture, we have the different lists, and it's just a matter of communicating with them. We pay for it so that it's not really spam. They have to sign up for it so that we don't get into trouble with that, and they can unsubscribe whenever they want. So we can send out anything we want through that system.
Okay, beautiful. I just didn't want to make sure we lost any time for getting approval for sending something like this out. But it technically was already approved by Marlene and whatnot, so that's great. Jacob, how are we looking on that motion?
I've got it here for you. That the AABE as a collective be invited to provide communication, reaction, and response to any protocols instituted by the medical officer of health in a timely manner going forward.
How do we like that?
Can I add proactively prior to implementation?
What's that, sorry?
I was looking for proactively prior to implementation.
Okay.
To further gain the agricultural community or the ag advisory boards, whichever you deem suitable, comments
Sorry,
and
just a
feedback.
So that the AAB as a collective be invited to provide proactive communication, or is that how you wanted to do it, or should we go back?
Yeah, I think what your motion read, except that the ag advisory board, if you put in there proactively, that he comes to us before implementation.
Okay.
To get the views and feedback of the ag advisory board. Trish, or Dusty, my network's pretty poor at the moment. I don't know if either of you heard that you can convey that.
Nope. That's the big thing I really wanted to touch on was the fact that yeah, you know what, that keeps it more general than to simply than to what I was saying was, you know, going above and beyond federal, but this maintains the fact that we are trying to establish that communication pipeline. So that works for me.
That the AAB proactively be invited to provide communication, reaction, and response to protocols instituted by the medical officer of health in a timely manner going forward.
That works. All right. Can I get a mover for that?
I'll move it.
Okay. And a seconder?
Good for me.
Okay, great. Thank you. So moved. Beautiful. Thank you for that. And then we already have our action item technically for the deputation that was given about cannabis in Norfolk County. So that has its due follow up. And then we're just going to follow that, and it will be attached to our action item list. Okay, good. Anything else under communications and other business?
Anita has her hand up.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Trish. Sorry, thanks, Trish. Anita?
Yeah, I forget, Dusty, that you're not on video now. Just wondering how we are voting on motions when we're doing this electronically, because we've got a mover and a seconder. I just didn't hear us voting on anything. So can we raise our hands in this meeting to show support of a motion?
I would just say if there's anybody opposed, speak now or for your piece.
Sounds
okay.
good.
No, thank you. So cycling back to both of those items, one being the cannabis follow-up and the take for information. Was there any opposed? As I'm blind over here? No. And secondly, for the ask for direction from the health unit to, in a timely and proactive manner, inquire with the Agriculture Advisory Board and community for all bunkhouse-related items that affect the agriculture industry. Was there any opposed? Seeing none? Beautiful. Okay. Thank you, Anita. That was a great point. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the action item list. Let's fire through this because a lot of these obviously have been either I shouldn't say obviously, but
I'm
have
running
been.
out of time here, Dusty. I have to go.
Yeah, that's fine, Trish. Thank you kindly.
I'm going to sign off. Thanks.
Thank you, Trish. Realistically, we got an update from the Norfolk County 45 and the lot relocation program already from Burgess. Starting from the top, on-farm septic systems, we're still waiting for that. I'm sure, and it's only going to be up in question as these bunkhouses. If could be an interesting point if bunkhouses are required to have more bathrooms per person. Is there any comment on this? Okay, seeing none. Road entrance permits. Yeah, that's. Councillor Columbus, I'm sure this has just been, I mean, can we move this to finish? Like they're understanding a case by case basis. Can we take this off the action tracking table, Councillor?
Right, they're understanding on a case by case basis. Mr. Jason Godby, he's only the acting general manager. So I don't know if we ever received a letter from him supporting his thinking on this, but I would leave it on there till we find out from him exactly so that there's no repercussions if we took it off.
For sure. Mr. Robbins, can you please add a September 23rd, 2020 note that we're awaiting official confirmation from Mr. Godley that the roads and the public works is willing to go case by case?
That's a good way to put it.
Sorry, Dusty. Which item were we looking at? Sorry, I just got it now.
Number 2, road entrance permits. Just like to add a timeline update.
Okay, so we're just waiting for Jason.
Yes, sir. Okay. Yep.
Who's the follow up going to be with? For getting that letter from Jason, because it just seems to me it just sits there and does nothing.
Yeah, that's for sure. Councillor Columbus, you have, can I put this onto you, or do you want me to get in touch with Jason?
Yes, if you want me, I will send him an email tomorrow morning and ask
I would greatly appreciate that, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any more comments on that? Okay, seeing none. Importing soil to Norfolk County, presenting senior leadership, that was in November. And I know, Anita, you were really spearheading this one. Have you heard anything more from this?
No, Dusty, I haven't heard anything, and I know there's been a lot of changes, but at Norfolk, and things can slip through the cracks. But this was not something I was spearheading, just bringing as information to council, to our committee, to the board.
For sure.
Something I think that we need to keep on top of, because this could become an issue sometime in the future.
What what department looks after this?
I believe it was bylaw that
Okay.
that was going to look at that.
Okay. All right, sounds good. So Jacob, can you please put a note that for today's date, all Dusty to follow up with bylaw to see how the presentation to senior leadership stood, and I'll report back.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other notes for soil to Norfolk? Okay. Lot relocations, we already addressed, but I mean, it's ongoing. And Norfolk Cherry is conducting one personally right now that's going all the way up the flagpole. So that could be setting precedent on behalf of that. So we will see where that lies. Councillor Columbus, was there any, are you allowed to talk? Was that part of a off-camera session?
Yes, that was an in-camera session that council held.
Yep.
All I can say is that your letter of support is going forward for that.
Okay, cool, thank you. All right, hey, we got one completed, beautiful. Prime Ag land discussion, that was done, great. New council primer, well, I mean, please, I don't know how we want to, I'll look to get in there. I think, yeah, we'll see about that one. Is it okay with everybody if I if we continue to delay this? Because I feel like it's maybe ill taste right now, or what is everybody's thoughts on this one?
Maybe higher priorities right now.
Yeah, exactly. So it's getting in front of council is we have a higher ops. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Nita. Kind of losing my words here. Okay. So okay, good. County 45 bridge. That's kind of delayed. Jason, or sorry, not Jason. Jacob, can you please update per so today's date per CAO Jason Burgess's comments from the AMO? Seems to be confusion in line who signs off to proceed with the bridge. Awaiting, I guess, I mean, and that's falling on Jason Burgess. So we're waiting a response back from the CAO, please. We're gonna get a bridge there before I croak. So help me God.
All good.
Okay. What's that? Okay.
Yes, sir. All good, Dusty.
Okay, thank you, sir. PSWs. We already. I mean, that's already dealt with. They already took that to council. Now it's done. Correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Columbus. Is that PSWs have been dealt with, and Councillor Van Passen dealt with that. He voted on that one, correct?
I don't know. Councillor Van Passen was part of the program here tonight, but perhaps he's left us. But
yeah, okay.
That's like a Ministry of Natural Resources issue, that provincially significant wetland.
Yeah, like I don't think that's pressing on anyone's lands anymore, but I don't want to assume.
You can take it up, but it may peak back up again.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right. And then Climate Change Committee. Yep. Jacob. Yeah. From our does the Climate Change Committee still exist?
I believe it does. Yes.
Okay, great. So that note, we are to circulate our minutes to them. They'll get a lot of bunkhouse talk, but we'll see. And then yeah, we're supposed to go back and forth on that one. Yeah, and then Danette Dalton for the Workforce Planning Board of Grand Erie. That was sent. I believe Mr. Hoskins sent our contact information on that one. So, are the members okay in us taking this off the tracking table? Cool. Okay. Then that's great. Seeing no opposed. So that's fantastic. Okay. Next meeting. Anything else coming? Sorry. Anything else coming out of the action tracking table? I will take your silence as a no, unless I hear otherwise.
You're adding the bylaws, the tree bylaw, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Jacob. Yes.
Sorry, I've fielded like 3 or 4 phone calls on it, so.
No, you're good. Thank you. Thank you, Ann. And what does the tree bylaw Jacob, can you read me the tree bylaw? Sure does an update, a refresher. That tracking. If you have it available.
I'll be honest with you, this is the first that I've heard about it.
Okay. And correct, is this about woodlot?
We need to update the bylaw, right? So I believe something went before council, like this was pre-COVID.
Oh,
and
yeah,
like,
that's right. That's right.
Motion that it just needs to be updated and that agriculture and normal farm practices have to be a part of the new bylaw that should be drafted.
Right. Okay, no, that's great. Okay, so, well, Jacob, in this, yeah, that's right. There was to accommodate modern agricultural practices, and there was a discussion about in prime agricultural lands and whatnot to updating the bylaw. So for that item, Dusty to include for his follow-up for the importing of soil, Dusty will also include that item to see where that stands. Okay, beautiful. Okay, our next meeting realistically should be an informal one right now. If I'm asking all the members of the Ag Advisory Board and fellow councillors if you can reach out to any prospective agricultural stakeholders to please send Hayden. Are you heeding this?
Yeah, I'll take responsibility for it and get the list compiled with questions, and I'll circulate it to the AAB. Okay.
I will also work on this with you because I feel like this will be a big one. And our timeline for receiving input is at latest what? Because you want to be sending this through on Monday, so you want to have information in by Friday. Is that correct?
Midday Friday. And then I'll take responsibility for drafting the email to Chris so that he can put it out in his agricultural blast.
And that timeline is for tomorrow, sir?
I'll have it to him tonight.
Okay, thank you kindly. Great.
And Chris Garwood, how soon could you have that out in that newsletter?
Mr. Garwood?
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. I can have that out pretty quickly. I mean, just draft it in a form that I just can cut and paste it and just paste it right in and just click send and it will send it to all of them. So if you get that to me tomorrow morning, I can send it out sometime tomorrow.
Beautiful. If I know Hayden, he'll probably have it to you by 8:59 or something like that. So I appreciate that, Chris and Hayden.
Okay, yeah, Hayden is usually on the ball for sure. Thank you, sir.
Beautiful. Okay, so now for next meeting, the thing is that I hate the fact that I don't hate the fact, I shouldn't say that, but labor is obviously a major component of our meetings as of late. Is there any other, in the next couple of weeks, if anyone has pressing items that we like to add above and beyond labor, please send that through. I don't want this board to be a strictly labor board, but obviously labor is a hot topic right now. So right now, if we can do a TBD and Jacob, between today's marches and so that's 2 meetings I know. I do not have my binder in front of me. How many meetings has the Ag Advisory Board had this year thus far, including today?
Off the top of my head, I believe it is 3, and I think that would require 1 more before the end of the year, I believe, but I would have to double check on that. Yeah, I believe 3 is correct, and I definitely, okay. So let's look to have one maybe that first week of November or before that, actually, depending on how the communication is created with the health unit, how soon the actually, let's kind of aim for one maybe in October, because we need to make ourselves as available as possible for the health unit. So let's aim for next meeting, October TBD, please. Is everybody in agreement, or am I off on that?
Mr. Chair, could I ask for a meeting, I think, in the 2nd week of October? And could I ask that instead of us waiting for other people to reach to the Ag Advisory Board, that the Ag Advisory Board requests the presence of the health unit and ask for their availability in the week of the 12th of October? And that we look to having a meeting during business hours to see if we can get a better attendance from the Ag Advisory Board. Yeah, I agree. So let's see. What week is that? That would be week 42, so October 12th to 16th. So are you proposing, Mr. Dooney, that we send out a blast to our members? And alongside the health unit to see their availability that week. Is that correct? Correct. And then if we can task Jacob with getting back to us on that, and then sending out a survey on the best time based on the availability of the health unit, the best time for the Ag Advisory Board.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, let's aim for that. And then Jacob, as you're working with the CAO, can you please let him privy to that information? That's what we're aiming for as well, sir. I know you can hear me, so I'll stop from asking you to come on. I was just
typing that out.
Nope, that's fair. No, I'll stop that. Okay. Yeah, because by then, hopefully there's updates. We'll also have a lot of the responses and from the memo back that Hayden put together, and also a response back from the health unit to those queries. And I'm sure it'll open up another Pandora's box of other things, which is great because I love that we are moving forward. Okay, anything else from members or fellow counselors that are online still? And I really appreciate it being late after, I know yesterday's meeting went late and today as well.
I just want to say thank you for letting me be a part of the meeting tonight, and it was very, very informative.
Thank you, Councillor Hoffman. We appreciate your attendance.
To the board members from Councillor Columbus, just thank you for your participation, and to you, Dusty, for leading the organization down the right path. Thanks.
Well, we have a lot to achieve yet, and the season's not done. I'm really I'm hoping that the part that is always keeping us up at night and on our toes is the fact that the harvest now this time of year are now we have transfers coming in from other farms, and there's a lot of that going on right now. So keeping our men and women healthy is paramount, and getting them home. So I look forward to work with the health units and seeing what resources they can allocate for, whether it is some sort of HOV lane, for lack of a better term, priority lane, to make sure that these people can get home safe and sound, and their tests done on time. But yeah, I appreciate everyone. With that, can I get a motion for adjournment?
Anita moves.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic night, and I will speak to you all soon. Thank you again, councilors and members. And Hayden, I will talk to you tomorrow morning, sir.
Thanks, Dusty.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Have a great night.
Thanks, guys.
Good night.